driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go in and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. And what about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner, says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide ride surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the Scouts to say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour
across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. We're approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock, and it is fabulous to have your company. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Joining me today is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. We're going to have to work on that job title. It's almost as long as my name. And we've got lots to talk about today, whether you are listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device. It is fabulous to have your company. Coming up today, we're going to be talking about how any child in England whose parents receive universal credit, and bearing in mind they could be receiving universal credit up to a whopping 40 grand annual income. Yes, really. They will be able to claim free school meals from September next year. The government says the change will make 500,000 more pupils eligible and will tackle poverty. If your parents are on 40 grand a year, no one is living in poverty. Should we be paying for other people's kids to eat their lunch at school when they are really not living in poverty? Maybe if parents are living in poverty, we should give them some more money, or I don't know. Tell them to get a job, maybe, so they can feed their own kids. Just throwing that mad idea out there. Old-fashioned, I know, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that story. We're also going to be talking about the latest wheeze on tackling migrants, because Labour say they're set to bring in new laws curtailing the use of the European Convention on Human Rights by foreign criminals. You know, the old Article 8 right to a family life. They're going to tackle that. Or are they? They reckon it's going to make it easier to deport overseas offenders as well as failed asylum seekers. Well, I think we'll all believe it when we see it. Meanwhile, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch is looking at launching a review into whether we should leave the ECHR. I mean, again, we can have a review into a report, can everyone please get on with it? I just don't think the British people are going to put up with it much longer. Plus, mental health hospitals are responsible for violent criminals being allowed, who are male patients, to self-identify as women. A new audit has revealed. Campaigners have warned NHS trusts they are playing Russian roulette with women's safety. But you know, trans rules. Happy Pride Month again, everybody. What are we on? Day 5? It's all going swimmingly well. Anyway, so much to talk about. Don't forget, by the way, if you do miss anything on the show, God forbid you've got a job and things to do and people to see, you can remember to go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. I know, it does exactly what it says on the tin. Hit subscribe so you never miss a thing. As I say, Philip is here. And Philip, I'm going to put the question to our audience, give them the numbers, and I want to hear your thoughts. You're certainly going to get my thoughts. That's what you tune in for on free school meals. 500,000 more children to get free school meals, even if their parents earn over £40,000. Now, most of them won't have parents earning over £40,000, but nevertheless, so on universal credit, they can earn that much. It's a cost of £1 billion to taxpayers. OK, it's over 3 years, but, you know, still, it's money we don't have that could go on other things. I want to know what your reaction is. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. You can also get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Philip, it seems very simple to me. If you have children, you should have children that you can afford to look after.
Yep.
And there will be times when people are down luck. They are between jobs. There's been a bereavement, domestic violence. A single mum is now on her own, dealing with living in a bedsit, with the kids. There are absolutely times when people are absolutely struggling, and my God, I want our welfare state to help those people. But the idea that we have all these people who are not able to afford to feed their kids, I mean, free breakfast clubs. A load of parents can't afford to feed their kids at lunchtime. Now we're giving free breakfast clubs as well. I mean, well, let's just give them dinner as well. Let's just feed them at weekends too. Why don't we just not even bother with parents at all anymore?
Don't send them home.
Yeah, exactly.
Boarding
schools for everybody. We'll take them out of the womb. 9 months gestation, and you'll never see your parents because apparently we're all useless. Already we've got free school meals for all primary school children in London.
Yep.
Free school meals across England and Wales. I think England, Wales as well, certainly England, for all children at infant school, so 4, 5, 6 and 7-year-olds. Again, doesn't matter what, you could be a higher income taxpayer, you could be a millionaire, and your kid at state school will get free school meals at the age of, up to the age of 7. Now they want to extend it. They're saying, look, there are a lot of parents who are on very low incomes who are struggling. If you're on universal credit, not just earning an income below £7,400 a year, which is the current limit, you will be eligible to have your child on free school meals. Is that a good thing to help kids, or is it a bad thing?
Well, I agree with you. There are individuals who are in dire circumstances who deserve help from the state. But the trouble is, with the state giving it to so many, then those individuals are losing out. And why should my taxes pay for someone else's kid to get fed? And if
you chose to have kids,
and if anyone claims that free school, then they should be audited to make sure that they don't have football season tickets, they're not vapors, they're not smokers, they're not heavy drinkers, they haven't got their Sky subscriptions or other subscriptions are available, and everything else, because that's where they're spending their money on, and not on their kids.
You're saying you don't believe there are people who can't afford to feed their kids?
I believe that there are a few who are in dire circumstances.
In
they're
temporary
the ones
circumstances.
Yeah, and they're the ones who don't shout about it. But I believe the majority can feed the kids.
I've done phone-ins on this before in a previous life, and I had so many people who called up who were on benefits, disability benefits, and one was a carer, one was severely disabled, who had children, people who were on minimum wage, working every day, but on minimum wage, saying we're on the lowest possible income. We can afford to feed our kids. Yep. We don't have a problem with feeding our kids. Yep. The average school meal, it costs in the region of, it's different. Inside London, outside London, what you're charged, it's £2.65 a day. That's £13.25 a week. Over the school year, 39 weeks, you're looking at £516 a year. That's a lot of money if you're on very low income. And that's what Bridget Phillips and the Education Secretary says, we're going to save parents. But the point is there are many thousands of parents who could afford to pay that.
Yep.
She says she wants to help those poacher kids. It's an extra £500 in their pocket. If Bridget Phillipson, and presumably the Chancellor and the Prime Minister who've signed off this £1 billion cost over 3 years. Oh yeah, it's not huge sums of money. We're looking at defence spending going sky high, etc., etc. But every penny counts, and every bit, take care of the billions, and the trillions will take care of themselves. But if she genuinely thinks the issue is that these parents haven't got the money and they desperately need that extra £500 a year because they can't afford to pay those, why don't you give those parents the extra £500 a year? Why aren't you giving them the extra £13.25 a week over those weeks of the year where they're at school to pay for their child's education? Because they either think those parents are, would spend that money on food but don't have it, Or are we saying we don't think those parents are actually feeding their kids and they're choosing not to, as you say, because they're going to buy another packet of fags and another bottle of cider?
Yeah, and what this does by doing this means that the kids will come home from school having had breakfast, having had lunch, and then the parents won't feed them in the evening because they'll use that to buy more.
And there are parents who don't do that.
There are.
That said, I'm rather of the view that the biggest problem with poverty, children in poverty in this country, is more about children being overfed and fed the wrong food. Yeah. Plate of chips is not a healthy, balanced diet, rather than too little food.
Yeah, another deterrent, and people think I'm right of Genghis Khan on this, is that anyone who's doing that therefore needs an automatic social services referral, so that, that actually the wider circumstances of the family can be examined and make sure that the kids aren't going to harm.
And this is the thing, isn't it? Because if children are coming to school hungry, something else is going wrong at the home.
Correct.
I mean, these are the kids whose parents, they don't clean their teeth, they don't have bedtime, they don't, everyone's sitting there, playing on the internet or watching porn and on drugs all night. I mean, that's the reality, and some kids are living in those homes. Shouldn't we be getting those kids out of those homes rather than leaving them there? But don't worry, you had some roast beef at lunchtime, so everything's fine.
Yeah. And don't worry, they're going to take the two-child cap off.
Two-child benefit cap. You can still have the children and you still get child benefit. What you can't do is get extra benefits on top of that for having extra children that you've chosen not to pay for.
Well, it seems to be, if you have kids, you're going to get everything thrown at you. If you're elderly, well, maybe it's going to change next week. You get it all taken off.
Well, indeed. Let's come on to that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Are we just being horrible, nasty, right-wing people? There are children. I know there are children whose parents don't feed them. And there will be some parents who are genuinely struggling and do not have that money through circumstances sometimes not of their own making. I get that. We need to be helping those kids. I know there are parents, there are teachers who literally have to see children who are, going into the dustbin to try and get food because they are so hungry. We need to deal with that. But I don't think the answer is handing out free school meals to hundreds of thousands of children. I think the answer is to make sure that you deal with what is going on in those homes and those families. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Maybe you grew up on free school meals. Absolute lifesaver for you. If you're a parent who's struggling, I'd love to hear from you. Maybe your kids are at school right now. What do you think of this? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Winter fuel allowance. U-turn by Rachel Reeves. Well, we had U-turn by the Prime Minister at PMQs last week. Rachel Reeves in that interminable speech yesterday, these poor sods having to stand behind her. But basically said that the winter fuel payments will be, because if you're going to announce a U-turn, when are people going to get it? I mean, I was going to say winter is approaching fast. It looks like winter out by the window of the studio right now. But basically, yes, people are going to get their winter fuel payments back this winter. But it looks like it's going to go back to all 10 million, but 5 million are going to have it clawed back in terms of tax taken, and which is obvious. My parents in their early 80s don't need to have 300 quid given to them from hard-earned taxpayers' money to pay for their central heating. They're doing just fine, thank you.
Yeah, and it's the right way of doing it, and they should have done that in the first place. Is anyone that's a higher tax earner should pay tax on it, or find a way of not find a way of not getting it.
Either of you are earning over 60 grand, I think then you get your pay tax.
So everything is electronic through the tax office, and therefore they just link the two computers together. Go, you're higher pay tax earner, you don't get that.
Or again, I think it should be paid instead of a one-off payment. It should be paid as part of the pension.
Yeah.
And then it also, none of these things to be on the word of man. A lot of the issues come down to the fact that we've got such a bad computer system in government. Well, 20 different bad computer systems in government. They don't speak to each other. They can't actually manage these things. But again, one of the reasons why this was never means tested and why child benefit wasn't means tested is actually the cost of means testing these things actually means it costs more than the extra people who get that.
Well, and the other thing about this is, this is one of the first and it was craziest things that the government brought in whenever they took power, and now less than a year later they're having to do a U-turn on it.
It was a bizarre announcement.
But it was when they brought it in, it was essential because the economy is in such bad state. The economy is in a worse state now. So
no, I think you'll find if you check more closely, we have turned a corner. And they dealt with that £22 billion black hole. Philip, you've got to keep up with the memos from Central Office.
Have you ever done hill walking? We've just got to the top of the hill. Oh, just over the next brow. We're at the top of the hill. Just over the next brow.
Parents, you all lie to us just over the next. I remember that. interminable walks in the snow in the Lake District.
Yeah.
I remember that.
It's just over the next hill, just round the next corner.
Don't you bring it, I'm going to post-traumatic stress disorder this way. Let's talk about another old favourite. Another old favourite here on the show. A new announcement on cracking down on migrants. This is Labour this time. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is drawing up legislation to make it easier to deport overseas offenders as well as failed asylum seekers. It's a report in the Mail. They want to bring in new laws curtailing the use of the Human Rights Convention by foreign criminals in particular, to restrict the use of the right to private and family life. This is Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, I've been long of the view, we need to deal with this. However, lawyers are going to get round it. And even if you say you cannot deport someone, they'll find another article. But there's never been any reason why any judge should allow someone, especially a foreign criminal or someone's got no right to be here as a failed asylum seeker, who's just an economic migrant, to stay here under Article 8. I'm going to read Article 8 to people because most people only know it's Article 8, right to respect for private and family life. Paragraph 1. Everyone has the right to respect for his private and family life, his home and his correspondence. I mean, it's not very non-binary, is it? But I mean, fair enough. And however, everyone, including all the judges at every single immigration and asylum tribunal, seems to have not read the second paragraph. Read on. Paragraph 2. There shall be no interference by a public authority with the exercise of this right, crucial word here, except such as is in accordance with the law, i.e. you've no right to be here, so sod off, and is necessary in a democratic society in the interests of national security, you're a possible terror threat, public safety, you're a convicted criminal, or the economic well-being of the country, you're a leech, we don't need you here, for the prevention of disorder or crime, again, you're a criminal, for the protection of health or morals, or for the protection of the rights and freedoms of others. You're right, for instance, not to have to live next door to a paedophile or a rapist who's a threat to you. This is really obvious. Article 8 does not give anyone who's committed a crime here, who's no right to be here, the right to stay here. So why have judges been allowing it all this time?
I know a lot of judges who apply it properly and throw people out. They're just not based in the UK. They're based in Germany, they're based in France, they're based in the Netherlands. They apply exactly the same law. So why do we...
And they've been doing it before this crackdown from Friedrich Merz.
Correct. Long before that. So I don't understand why our judges interpret it in a different way and why the government has to bring in new legislation to do anything else. There just needs to be, from the Justice Secretary, clear direction going out to the judges saying, apply it as it says there. Do not use that as an excuse to stop people getting out.
I think any judge...
Wind your necks in,
Any
judges.
judge who is not able to read past paragraph 1 should be sacked from the bench immediately, because you're obviously an idiot. I don't care how many A-levels and first-class degrees from Oxford or Cambridge you've got. You clearly are a complete idiot, and you've got no business being a judge.
Does it give an exemption for chicken nuggets?
There is no exemption. This is weird.
There
is no exemption for paedophiles who will miss seeing their own children that they're only allowed to see under supervision, because what with being a convicted paedophile and all. I mean, these cases
there must be a little note somewhere. There's the small print.
Well, exactly. There's no way. I've just read that to you. There's no way. All the cases we call celebs we've had in the news in the last few months. I mean, non-stop. The Albanian nuggets, the paedophile. I mean, there was one a day for about a month. Not one of those should be allowed to stay if you read paragraph 2.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. We have activist judges leaving the ECHR, which is something Kemi Badenoch is looking at having a review of. I thought you were already doing that, love.
Yeah.
Get on with it, mate. You haven't got until like a month before the next general election to come up with some policy. You're going to have to do it this year. Nigel Farage is on your ankles.
Yes.
Get on your trail. But I just find it absolutely extraordinary that anyone thinks we can carry on with activist judges. I'm sorry, we're going to need to have a very clear instruction to those judges. And if they continue being politically activist as they are, they've got to go, because that's not the job of a judge.
No, a judge should be completely apolitical in the same way that you shouldn't be influenced by anything. And I'm afraid it is quite clear that they are being influenced by different lobby groups.
There's other stories, of course, involving the French saying they're going to agree to intercept migrant boats for the first time. Yeah, that was a great sound. I love that. I mean, that was just, exactly. Although apparently French unions are going, oh, no, we cannot do this because it will put us in danger.
Yeah, but how many meetings...
Sorry, I didn't spoke with Gitan at the end of
that. How many meetings have the government had with the French saying, we've reset everything, we've given them more money, they're going to do this? Surely when you're having a meeting, you'll discuss intercepting the migrant boats.
And it's difficult to do, but
it is
either
difficult to
way.
do, but that would have been
Shoot the
number
boats,
one.
shoot the boats, their dinghies, then they'll move on to yachts. Who are we kidding? Can we also talk about fat jabs? I've been saying since word go, these fat jabs are not going to be the miracle cure. Everyone thinks they are. Even if you don't lose, everyone will lose weight. Not everyone lose weight. Even if you don't lose weight, they're fantastic for every other health issue. And barely any side effects. Well, apart from all the side effects that people say, and the fact that the moment you come off them, you're likely to put all the weight back on again. But the latest is a fat jab health warning on two fronts to women. One is that actually it looks very likely, particularly Monjaro, which is the most common one, means that basically contraceptive pill doesn't work. So we're seeing women getting pregnant who are not planning to get pregnant, saying basically if you are on this, you should be using condoms as well. But also fears for unborn babies and indeed babies that are being breastfed. Again, I would have thought that was a statement of the bleeding obvious. I mean, you're not even supposed to take paracetamol unless absolutely necessary while you are pregnant. The idea you'd be on a weight loss jab, given that you're not supposed to take this unless it's under doctor supervision.
Yep.
What the hell are doctors doing giving it to women who have... You shouldn't be trying to lose weight when you're pregnant. Maybe you want to try and do that before you get pregnant, maybe, I don't know. But, I mean, genuinely outrageous that this is happening. We're going to talk to Carl Hennigan, who's Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine. We should do more of that, people, in this country. This is entirely not just predictable, but predicted, isn't it?
As soon as you put something inside your body, it is going to react with other things, and it's going to have different side effects. And if you're you're not in the standard view of things, i.e., you're pregnant or there's something else going on with you,
they don't test these things on pregnant women.
Then it hasn't been tested against you. So there may be reactions that have not been published. But I suspect if you go through the small print on whatever instructions they give with it, that small print will turn around and say not suitable for pregnant women or something
or women
else.
trying to get pregnant.
But people don't read those.
But people, again, a lot of people getting them over the internet. And again, when we start having babies that are dying in utero or stillborn or with defects, Well, I mean, we're just going to say "I told you so" and that'd be okay? It's the babies that are suffering, and doctors not sticking to this, and also don't buy your drugs off the internet. Don't get them from the local beauty salon. Get them from a doctor, not even a pharmacist. Get them from a doctor.
Yeah, but again, that's part of the problem.
Eat less.
Yeah, again, that's part of the problem.
Throw that out there. Eat less.
You can't get to see a doctor, so that's why people are going online and doing so much more online, and it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. I feel quite angry quite a lot about a lot of stories. It's just when you wake up and you go, oh my God, the whole world is mad. It's just like, can everyone just stop doing stupid things and make
we should have a happy day every month, and we just do happy stories.
Oh, we haven't had one of those for a while. Anyway, 10:23 is the time. We're going to go to a quick break. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll get your messages too, particularly about rolling out more of those free school meals for 500,000 more kids. Are they all the children of parents who simply can't afford to feed them lunch? My God, they're already getting free breakfast. What else are we going to give them? Trips to Thorpe Park as well? Probably. This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
Is that a real baby bump, or has she strapped it on? She's got form for strapping on baby bumps. So what do you think as you see it? I think
there's something very wrong with that shape, in my view. I don't know. Look, I'm mesmerised, but I'm kind of. Do you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking, I'm glad the Queen is no longer with us, because oh my Lord, how she would be shuddering at those images. It's so undignified.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is the Home of Common Sense. 10:26 is the time. Philip Ingram is still with me. We're both having a bit of a rant about this free school meal thing. It just breaks me. It really, really does. And I'm asking you, what you make of this idea of basically giving more free school meals out. John says, I think the government should rethink this and adjust the parents' tax code, or actually subsidise the child's school meal directly. There will be millions and millions of pounds of waste. Joanna says, all children should receive free school meals if they want them. Not every child will. Since when do we spend taxpayers' money based on what a kid wants? I mean, let's give all children a free Nintendo as well if they want one.
Well, latest iPhone.
I mean, latest iPhone. I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
vapes. We'll just put them outside.
I still remember a kid arriving at my home for a party, for a sleepover, and had the latest iPhone. I mean, literally. The one that came out like the week earlier. I had a 2-year-old one. I thought I was special, and I had to obviously confiscate phones. Yeah, I hid that one away. No, but it's like, who gives their? I mean, we're talking about an 11-year-old. A latest iPhone. That is, I mean, I'm sorry, that's sick. Pat says, why should we pay to feed people's kids? You breed, you feed, it's that simple. David says, why am I feeding other people's kids? Oscar says, cheap and nasty ingredients in school dinners. It's poor quality food, why bother? Well, and you're hungry enough. Yeah, as if people are eating really great quality food the rest of the time. Let's go to the phone line. Sam is in Swansea, wants to have his say. Good morning to you, Sam.
Morning, Julia. Thanks for taking my call.
Her. Hello, Sam. I'm so sorry. She wants to have her say. What do you want to say, my darling?
I'm a recently retired head teacher of a primary school in Swansea, and I just wanted to give my views. I totally disagree with having blanket free school meals. We basically cannot afford it. Wales is in crisis financially, and we just cannot afford this. Yeah. However, we have to be mindful of the working poor. Yeah. We're not. They are probably in a worse position than those on benefits. I think it should be means tested in some shape or form. But there was a comment you made earlier about notifying social services if children come in hungry. Yeah. Done that. Got the T-shirt. They don't want to know. It doesn't meet the threshold.
Yeah. No one's putting a cigarette out on them. They're not being given heroin, so it's not a problem.
Absolutely, and we have, as schools, have been feeding children for a long, long time, coming in, buying our own food to give them, to make sure they had food at the start of the day, and yes, following it up with a call to social services, but they almost laugh you off the line. So it's
okay. So when little Johnny or little Jane turns up and they are clearly hungry. What is the reason why they are hungry? Is it you'll have met the parents? I'm assuming they turn up occasionally. Is it because the parents are desperately struggling, working every hour God sends, but somehow, unlike all the other people doing exactly the same, can't afford to buy a loaf of bread or make a sandwich for their kid at lunchtime? Or is it they are choosing to spend their money on other things, or they're just totally hopeless? What's happening?
I think it's a combination of all of the above, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of these children come from very chaotic homes. Yeah. And therefore there isn't any time or, dare I say it, will to get organised in the morning to give them breakfast. So when they arrive in school, sometimes they've only just rolled out of bed. So you can't learn when you're hungry. So that's the first thing we would do at the start of the day, is to make sure that they've got some food inside them to get started. And schools across Wales, and I'm sure England as well, have been doing this for years.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why they started these free breakfast clubs. And again, a lot of that is actually, I mean, I know plenty of single mums who've had to use free breakfast clubs. Well, breakfast clubs they paid for over the years, simply because they need to be at work at a certain time and they haven't got someone else to help with it. But they've gone off and they're doing their 8-hour day and they just need a little bit of help either end of the school day. And that's always helpful. But in terms of free lunches, there was a big stigma, wasn't there, for many years, and certainly in my day, kids who got free lunches because they were on a register. It was obvious who was the free school kid, free school lunch kid. Whereas now everyone's got those little smart cards. They're just paying with that. No one knows who's on free school lunches. So there's no stigma at all. Why are the kids who are getting free school lunches? The cap now is £7,400 income, which is obviously not a lot, but why are those kids not able to have parents who can afford food? Are the parents disabled? Are they sick? Or what's going on?
It's a variety of all those things. Like I said, the worst cases are those that come from those chaotic households where parents can't manage money. They're struggling because they don't know what to prioritise, and they're almost like children themselves. Yeah. And that's the concern, is that they are the families that we've had the most problems with, where they just have such a chaotic household, financially, emotionally, physically, and therefore the children suffer as a result.
And they do, and again, that's why we want to step in and help. It's all very well wagging our fingers. However, there comes a point, doesn't there, where so now teachers are having to sort of potty train them, teach them how to clean their teeth, feed them. I mean, what are we going to be doing next? Closing them?
I know. It's literally now like a one-stop shop, a school now. We provide the whole service to the community, and it is, the underfunding is really, really hurting, because we are basically propping up. We are psychologists, we're doctors, we're nurses, we're parents, we're teachers, and it's really, really tricky.
Less time to do the teaching. That's the worry, isn't it? Sam, so appreciate your call. Thank you so much. It was really interesting to hear from you. Do call in again. Let me hear from Stuart now. He's in Wigan. Hi, Stuart. What did you make of what Sam had to say?
Hiya. I just want to say, because I was a single dad, I brought my kids up from very young on my own. I worked all the way through it, 99% at the time. And I always paid for my kids, and I went without food. If anybody were going without food, that was going to be me. Yeah. Now, I brought my kids up how I thought they should be brought up, how I was brought up, with manners, with respect, and everything else. Now, I'm a granddad now, and my 2 daughters have got kids, and they're picking them up the same way. And I know for a fact that both of them would go without food for their kids. Now, I totally agree with the fact that, you know what I mean, there's a lot of people smoking and this and other saying that we haven't got any money. I totally agree with that. But for him to say earlier on about getting social services involved, because it's only the good parents, really, that get involved with social services. I mean, if you go back to Baby P, they didn't go in that house because the other bloke were aggressive. Well, I'll tell you what, get somebody that's more aggressive.
Yeah, they were on the list. Yeah, Baby P, who was obviously brutally murdered by his mum's partner. I mean, look, I'm not sure social service is the answer a lot of the time. And again, they haven't got the resources. They're dealing with kids in far worse circumstances than missing a school lunch. But what is the answer then? For the parents who aren't like you and most of the people listening and watching who do the right thing, what is the answer?
Well, the answer is, if they've got money for smoking, they've got money for food. Do you know what I mean? You've got to do something about that. You've got to take the parents in hand. It's not a case of, and I know that sounds like I'm saying go to social services, but it's not. I don't know how I'd do it. Yeah. But I'd do that.
But we're kind of tackling the problem at the wrong end. Stuart, thank you so much for your call. Really appreciate that. 10:34 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. We're back with you in just a couple of moments. This is Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you for your company. Coming up to 10:37. Philip Ingram's still with me now. Also, Gavin Rice joins us. He's Head of Political Economy at Onward. He's also a former Special Advisor to the Brexit Secretary. A very good morning to you, Gavin.
Good morning, Julia. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for joining us. Let's talk just specifically with you right about now about migrants arriving and migrants possibly leaving, and various stories in the papers today. One, that the Prime Minister is planning this legal crackdown on migrants exploiting the right to family life under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. This also as a Kemi Badenoch is pledging to revive a Rwanda-style scheme and looking at leaving the ECHR. I mean, I don't know how many times we can see these headlines: another crackdown, smashing the gangs, stopping the boats, you name it. Do you think there's actually any hope that a crackdown on particularly the use of Article 8 in these asylum tribunals and in courts could make a difference?
Well, I think it's very good that the government is at least conceding in its rhetoric that there is a problem with this, which is something that actually Labour have been very reluctant to do until now. It sounds very nice and very friendly, the right to a family life, but then you read about stories that you may have seen in the news today. One of the examples that was used following the announcement was that there was a Jamaican foreign national offender who'd already committed a crime, who made a successful appeal against deportation under the right to a family life, who went on to commit a murder only a few weeks later. So it's good that they're committing, that they're accepting that this is actually a problem. I think one of the problems with both Keir Starmer's approach and also with what I've seen of what the Conservatives have suggested so far is that they don't get to the root of the problem. They're trying to kind of carve out exceptions to our legal obligations under the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights. But ultimately, that is an international treaty which the UK has signed up to as a matter of international law. You can try and carve out as many domestic carve-outs as you like, but whilst you are fundamentally part of that convention, you are always going to get overruled.
Well, it was, the thing is, I've read out that, I won't read it again because for bore my audience, but Article 8, the right to respect for private and family life, there should be no interference by a public authority about this right, except, and then it gives a whole raft of reasons why you don't have a right to private and family life. I mean, it's one of the reasons why, for instance, that right could be superseded by you being sentenced to prison. You don't have a right to a family life if you've committed a crime that needs prison sentence. It is utterly bizarre to me that judges who apparently are all, top Oxbridge students are unable to actually read the second paragraph of the article and actually see that it's quite clear that if there is a need to protect the interests of national security or prevent disorder or crime, or protection of rights and freedoms of others, most of these people would be deported, certainly all foreign criminals automatically. So the issue isn't necessarily the convention, it's the interpretation, I would say misinterpretation of this article that is the problem, and that is a problem with activist judges. They're the problem, not the actual convention.
Well, I do think the judges are a problem, and particularly the immigration tribunal judges seem to be a particular problem. The issue is that it isn't only this one right, it's the way that the different rights interact. So there's also this thing called, it sounds very techie, but the principle of non-refoulement, and this was the issue with the Rwanda scheme. You cannot send someone away, you cannot deport them to another country where they could be at risk of mistreatment if they're in a country where they have the death penalty, where they could be tortured, or where we just don't trust their legal system.
Or sent back to their own original home country.
Well, no, exactly, and if we don't basically trust, or the court in Strasbourg doesn't trust the integrity of that system, or thinks that it might use cruel methods or cruel punishments, then there is no carve out. Even on the national security grounds, that right is absolute, and that means that we cannot deport people who come here illegally, and crucially foreign national offenders who've come to the country and committed crimes.
And basically most of the countries that people have been looking at to deport people to, whether it's Rwanda or Albania or wherever, are countries which we don't really trust the legal system of. If they were really functioning high-level countries, they wouldn't be happy to take the people we don't want. I mean, let's just be honest about that. I mean, Kemi Badenoch is talking about, being about the Rwanda-style scheme. I was always the view they had a right to do it, but I didn't think this was on the scale that would make any difference. There's some evidence this week that it did have some sort of deterrent effect. But she's also talking about a review into whether we should leave the European Convention. Is that just sort of too slow, too little, too late from the Conservatives, especially as we see Nigel Farage and Reform, on their heels?
Well, it's good to see that they're not just looking at reviving a Rwanda-style scheme, but they are actually going to review the ECHR question more broadly. I think that's something that probably should have happened sooner.
Yeah.
What Rwanda was basically an attempt, I would argue a pretty brave attempt by Rishi Sunak, the former Prime Minister, to sort the problem without leaving the ECHR, because he knew that the support and the numbers within the Parliamentary Conservative Party were simply not there for that. So he was really kind of attempting to square the circle. But the Conservative Party is now in a fight for survival. And one of the main things that has been sinking it was the fact that it failed to get a grip of the border question and the small boats.
Well, apparently we're going to get it all sorted now because France has pledged to come up with a plan within the next 6 weeks to intercept migrant boats. They call them taxi boats, effectively, at sea for the first time. We've always been told they can't do that. They're going to have some sort of legal change. We've already had the French unions for the police going, oh, no, you cannot do this. You'll put us at risk. Do you think that'll ever happen?
We shall see. I mean, I've always wondered why the French so far seem to have been pretty happy to allow illegal migrants who've passed through France, which is a safe country, to come on to the UK. I think the reason is that once they get here, it's then our legal problem in international law, not France's problem. But that's just probably my prejudices about the French.
No, I mean, they're rather open about it, aren't they? Say it is our problem. In the same way, when the Rwanda scheme was scrapped and they all started wandering off to Ireland, my view was, that's your problem now.
Well, and this is, again, the craziness of the international law, which is that once someone gets to your country, it becomes your problem, regardless of where they came from or which countries they've passed through. We'll see whether the French plan actually goes anywhere. But I mean, I don't know if you saw Dominic Cummings's long interview the other week where he talked about... yes, I mean, it was very interesting, although it was rather long. And he said, ultimately, operationally, it's pretty easy to stop the boats. You just turn them round or you take the people on board to an island somewhere and sort it out later, but you don't allow them to come on shore. The problem is that policy would just be blocked by the courts and you would end up being dragged before Strasbourg. So maybe this is kind of an interim measure, but I can't see a world in which there are not legal consequences for it.
There's no doubt at all there are political consequences, though. We saw the political consequences. It wasn't even... cost of living was a massive issue as well, the NHS delays as well, and, weariness with the Conservative government after the last 14 years. But certainly immigration, failure to stop the boats, mass legal migration as well. Huge big issues at the last election. And there's no doubt at all they will continue to be big issues. Big issues for this government, though, and we can see the political pressure coming from Labour MPs, not just floating voters, has been this issue of the winter fuel payments, and Rachel Reeves basically has had to sort of back down on her plan to sort of take winter fuel payments away from 10 million people. Yesterday she admitted after a U-turn from the Prime Minister at PMQs last week that the payment's going to come back this year, this autumn, for all 10 million pensioners who lost it, but 5 million of those will have it clawed, some of it clawed back in taxes. She's also been in battles, Rachel Reeves, we understand, with Ed Miliband, the Net Zero secretary, and it turns out, against all our hopes, she has lost those battles. He's going to carry on with a load of his insane targets, putting the country into even more debt. In terms of where this government is politically, as someone who was a special advisor in a recent government, I mean, they are. I've never seen a government make as many sort of mistakes, self-imposed mistakes on their own, and seen their popularity wane so quickly. What do you make of it?
I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it? It's, I don't want, obviously I'm not a Labour person. There's obviously some schadenfreude in seeing them fail, but I also don't want this country to be governed badly. And it does just astonishingly directionless. It seems as though the only overriding principle that they've been trying to pursue, if there's one at all, is the idea that they want to try and balance the books. Rachel Reeves is basically a bit of a bean counter. She wants to make sure that the kind of the fiscal targets are being met. The problem is every single time they make a cut, which they say is necessary in the interests of prudence and controlling public spending, they then seem to U-turn later. And on winter fuel payments, I know the Conservatives have been attacking them over it, and I understand politically why you would do that. They are the opposition. I think there is a real genuine question to be asked about the affordability of every pensioner, regardless of how rich they are or regardless of how high income they might be, getting it when we are in obviously quite tight fiscal circumstances, and they're clearly just unable to pick a policy and stick to it. So it's extraordinary that they're U-turning.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? Gavin Rice, great to talk to you, Head of Political Economy at Onward, former Special Advisor to a Brexit Secretary. Thanks for that. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that. In terms of these U-turns by the government in these announcements, there does seem to be an extraordinary lack of thinking through of policies. And given they had 4 years, and Keir Starmer was, leader of the opposition for 4 years. Yeah, there were other things going on, lockdown, Ukraine war, and the like. They've had an awful lot of time when they were ahead in the polls, where it was likely they would win. They didn't seem to have actually kind of planned anything.
They didn't do any thinking whatsoever. Before the election, I was talking to someone who's on the Labour front benches about various policies, and he said to me, "No, we're not doing any planning. We will wait until we get in. We will see how the lie lands. We
find that £22 billion black hole.
We can't. We'll blame the Tories for everything, and we'll get away with that for the first 2 years."
This cabinet minister told
this cabinet
Are they
minister,
in the cabinet now?
They're in the cabinet now. Physically told me this and said we can blame the Tories for the first 3 years. That'll allow us to get to the second round.
I don't think 3 years is going to wash.
And we can't be held to account because we haven't put any plans out there.
Great. Welcome to our politics, folks. 10:47 is the time of your reaction to that. 0344 499 1000. We promise we're going to get to more of your calls coming in thick and fast about free school meals. Up next, we are going to be talking about the latest bad gender ideology, and we'll be talking about that with Debbie Hayton. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
So you've sort of kicked off a bit of an internal struggle inside the Tory party, which surely at this time, when Labour are doing so badly, you don't really need to do you?
Well, I'm not going to get drawn into the he said, she said of this, Mike. The reality
Well, you're already in it, because you started it.
Accept this. Well, no. What I'm talking about is what happened economically rather than anything else, or who did what at what time. The reality is that we lost our mantle for fiscal responsibility as a party at that time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Thank you so much for your company. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me as well. Let's talk right now about, well, I mean, the latest, we say woke madness, but this is actually about putting women in danger. And this is a trust in London, NHS trusts, which are allowing trans women, let's call them what they are, men, to use female-only spaces, despite acknowledging that they actually pose a risk. Well, they use these terms, a risk to a particular gender and are potentially very distressing for other patients on a single-sex ward. What they mean is they're allowing men who claim that they identify as women onto women's single-sex wards in mental health hospitals. Mental health hospitals, where by definition there is a strong chance that people are both A, the women, vulnerable, and B, the men, possibly a threat to the women. Why is this being allowed? Well, it's in the name of the woke, is it not? Because you're allowed to self-identify. Despite the fact, of course, we've got a Supreme Court ruling making it very clear if it's a provision for women only, then only biological women should be in that provision. Well, let's talk to Debbie Hayton about this. He's an author of Transsexual Apostate, My Journey Back to Reality. He's also a teacher and lives as a trans woman. Very, very good morning to you, Debbie.
Hi, good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining. I mean, again, I thought all these stories, I think when we had that Supreme Court decision on biological sex, this would all be over. It doesn't matter whether it's hospitals, Parliament, a beach sauna on the beach in Brighton. Everyone seems to find it very, very difficult to understand the concept that a man who claims he's a woman isn't actually a woman and shouldn't be in a woman-only space.
Well, yes, quite. And I think in some cases that policymakers who have drafted and put into effect some really ludicrous policies need to go and unpick those policies, not try and ignore them. And in the case of mental health hospitals, yes, you're absolutely right. These women are vulnerable, but also in a lot of cases they can't actually leave. So this is an even worse situation when you're putting women into an environment that they can't actually walk out away from.
Yeah, exactly. Well, under the current NHS guidelines published in 2019, they say that transgender people should be accommodated according to the way they dress, their name and their pronouns, which they say may not always accord with the physical sex appearance of the chest or genitalia. And it applies to not just the wards, but toilet and bathing facilities as well. Apart from, pre-operative trans people sharing open shower facilities, that doesn't apply. This is clearly a risk. This is the same as the risk of trans-identifying men being in, prisons, women's prisons, trans-identifying men being in domestic violence shelters with women who are very vulnerable. I can understand people wanting to be nice and woke and understanding and maybe choosing to use someone's preferred pronouns and all of that. But fundamentally, we are talking about vulnerable women's safety here.
Well, we are. And this is just not compliant with the law, which was clarified by the Supreme Court last month. And if the NHS carries on with these policies, then they'll end up being sued. And who will end up paying the bill? It'll be down to the taxpayer again. So I really think as individuals, as taxpayers, that we need to put pressure on the NHS to actually see reason and draft some policies which are actually compliant with the law.
I mean, what's very frustrating is actually Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, he was as woke as everyone for a while. And then I think he actually sat down with people, I think at Sex Matters, and had proper conversations, spoke to experts, and he got it. He accepted. He was Shadow Health Secretary, the cash review on puberty blockers and treatment for children who believed they were trans. And he's actually been quite sound. I don't understand why he cannot, as Health Secretary, as the man who's giving the funds to all of these organisations within the NHS that we pay for with our taxes, go out, make a statement. Today, as of today, this stops now. Why can't he do that? And why won't he do that?
Well, perhaps I go back to Westminster, which I used to watch years ago. He's the minister, but what is happening in his department? What's happening in the Department of Health? Do his officials come to him and say yes, minister, and then procrastinate?
And we know that the public sector has been completely captured by trans ideology. And again, you're a wonderful commentator on this and campaigner on this because you choose to live as if you were the opposite sex, but you realise you're not the opposite sex and you're not demanding women's rights as a result of that, for which I'm very applaud you and speaking out on this. This is the thing. It's when an organisation like the NHS has been so captured, they almost can't see the wood for the trees. They're there to protect people, and mental health units in particular, vulnerable people. Vulnerable women shouldn't have. In one case, they talked about in this audit of, again, let's say, a male patient who happened to be considering himself trans. He had bipolar disorder. He was in a manic state, and of course he was taking off his clothes in a manic state in a women's area. That would have been terrifying for women.
And totally unacceptable. Any right-minded person would say that is totally unacceptable. The policy is absurd.
Yeah, yeah, it's just really that simple, isn't it? Let's look at another, I think, absurd policy, very different, without the same danger attached. But a school, this is at Honeywood School in Colchester, in Essex. They sent a letter, they had sent a letter around to parents banning pupils from wearing skirts in its drive to be more inclusive and offer gender-neutral options. So basically all pupils, male or female or non-binary or trans or whatever everyone thinks they are today, will be wearing either shorts, tailored shorts or tailored trousers. Those are the options. No skirt, that's not an option anymore. Now, a lot of parents are upset and angry. A lot of pointing out, well, you know, girls been allowed to wear skirts since time immemorial. What if a girl wants to wear a skirt? Again, what is the purpose of these sort of bans? Why? Because there may or may not be some pupils who say, well, you know, I don't know which uniform to wear because of whatever my issues are. Why should that affect every single girl in the school who just wants to wear a skirt?
Well, it shouldn't. I read through the story here, and it seemed to me that the whole class was being punished for the sins of the one, which we're told not to do that in teacher training college.
Yes, well, as a teacher yourself, exactly.
Yeah, it did seem that the underlying issue here was not so much the inclusivity, but the fact that the girls have been rolling up the skirts. But girls have always done that, and it's the job of teachers to always say, roll them down.
Everyone at my school, I went to a single-sex school, so, you know, and you didn't bother rolling your skirt up during the school hours. The moment we got on that bus, you rolled them up. I mean, that was... But again, if a head teacher can't deal with kids in uniform, I always love those heads who at the beginning of term, after 15 emails and letters and meetings with parents, they've said, you can't wear trainers, you have to wear this or that, and any kid who isn't the right uniform is sent home, and they send 50 kids home. And all these parents are up in arms, and I'm applauding those head teachers every time. I believe really strongly. Strict uniform, strict discipline and all that, and it sets the tone for a whole school. I find it extraordinary. A head teacher who can't enforce uniform, frankly, is not worth their salt.
Well, uniform is always an issue. It's always a case where teachers are always going to be nagging children, and children are always going to push boundaries.
That's part of the game.
Yeah, one solution which we came up with in a previous school for the skirts being rolled up, the head of drama found some rather unflattering long wraparound skirts in the props cupboard. And these were then brandished in a sixth form assembly, and said that any girl whose skirt is too short will be required to wear one of these skirts for the rest of the day, just to keep you safe, of course.
Oh no, there'll be a human rights lawyer who get involved on that. Debbie Hayton, so appreciate you joining us, author of Transsexual Apostate, My Journey Back to Reality. She's also a teacher. He, she. I get it confused. I see the word Debbie, I think she, but I know he, quite happy to have he pronouns. Philip, very brief word.
Yeah, uniform should be uniform, but I see too many kids...
Make a good point.
I see too many kids going around, girls going around, who are not wearing skirts, they're wearing belts. And that's down to the teachers, parents and everything else.
Parents. We all did it, but again, if you're doing it in school and the teachers can't handle it, then I'm sorry, I just don't think you're up to the job. And also, parents, back up the teachers on the school uniform to the letter. More coming up on free school meals, plenty of other topics. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense.
We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I'll do, mate, I'll shove a 5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed whack the rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the Scouts to say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour
across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning. Welcome back to the show. If I say so myself, it's a rip-roaring show today here at Talk, the home of common sense. Very much appreciate your company and your input. Fantastic calls coming in on the issue of free school meals. We'll come to that in just a moment. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's always fantastic to have your company and to have you put your tuppence worth in as well. Don't forget, if you do miss any of the show, because, you know, you've got life, I get it, you can go to my YouTube page, it's a cunning name, you'd never guess it. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. We could have come up with something more imaginative than that, couldn't we? It's the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show on YouTube.
It's too long. I think we need to shorten it.
JHB yapping. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe so you never miss a thing. It'd be great to have you on board that as well. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking a bit more about free school meals. They are being handed out now to another 500,000 more pupils. Already, primary school pupils up to infants, so at the age of 7, they get them for free everywhere. Whole of primary schools in London. Oh, Sadiq Khan, you're so generous to us with our own taxes here in the capital city, giving free school meals to, you know, the children of millionaires. That seems to make sense. And kids whose parents are on the lowest incomes. Now it's going to be extended to anyone whose parents are on universal credit. You can be earning up to 40 grand as a household and still get universal credit, so your kid would be eligible for free school meals. But great for you, get an extra 500 quid in your pocket effectively. You don't have to spend on free school meals, so on paid school meals every year. But why should everyone else be working hard and paying taxes to pay for your kid to eat lunch? It's bad enough we're having to pay for the free school breakfast clubs, are we not? Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X as well, at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost one standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking more about the Home Secretary Vic Cooper planning to bring in new laws to curtail the use of the European Convention of Human Rights by foreign criminals. In particular, the complete misuse of Article 8, that's the right to respect for private and family life. You can have your private and family life, you're just going to go and do it over there, not here. Also going to be talking about the health chief's warning that women who are on fat jabs should take effective contraception. Basically, there have been a huge number of claims of an Ozempic baby boom. It's actually not a baby boom, but there is a very strong chance that these interfere with your contraceptives, so you should be using condoms as well. But also, if you are on a weight loss jab, you certainly shouldn't be doing it if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. Shouldn't that have been something women were told already, though? Plus, we're also going to be talking a little bit more about Donald Trump, who's announced extraordinarily that a complete ban on, I think, is it a total of 12 countries? The visas being given out to people from 12 different countries. They simply won't get them. quite a lot of countries on the list that I would add to, actually. Another 7 countries would be restricted, saying we just simply don't want these people in our country. Well, we'll talk about that later as well. All that coming up. Delighted to say Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, joins us throughout for all the chat and, of course, your calls as well. Morning to you once again, Philip.
Good morning.
I mean, where do we start? Free school meals. You and I have had a right old rant about this already. I mean, again, the average cost of a school meal at lunch in the last year is £2.65 a day, so it's £13.25 a week, adds up 39 weeks a year, £516 a year. So Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, has been doing the media round today saying it's another £500 in parents' pockets that they've got to spend on other things if money is tight. But the fact that they're expanding it from not just people who are on incomes of less than £7,400, which is, yes, a very low income, bearing in mind that won't include your housing benefit and numerous other benefits. It really won't. But you're talking about people who are really, really low incomes, a level that's not changed since 2018, so it's not gone up with inflation, so that really is worth a lot less than it used to be. But from autumn next year, 2026, if your parents have got universal credit, sort of automatically you will be eligible for free school meals. So there is an element there. There'll be a load of kids whose parents haven't been claiming it, didn't know they could claim it, too proud to claim it, too chaotic and hopeless don't care to claim it. A lot of kids who are on incomes just above that, whose parents are really struggling, they'll get those free school meals. My issue, and I know that you share a lot of my concerns, is why on earth are kids whose parents can quite easily afford free school meals getting free school meals on the taxpayer? Other taxpayers at work who are struggling as well, who are paying for their kids, aren't getting it. But also, crucially, for me, I don't think it's a good idea that the state just keeps taking over more and more of the job of the parent. Free breakfast clubs, free lunch. Why don't we just leave them at school for dinner now? Why don't we get the schools and the state to clothe our children as well? Maybe keep them at weekends. At what point do we say this is a responsibility of a parent? And if a parent isn't feeding their kid adequately and not able to provide for them, maybe we should be talking about other solutions.
Well, yes, and you forgot about teeth cleaning classes when they come in. So what are parents doing? You know, and we heard from some fantastic callers who turned around and said they went without food so that their kids would get fed.
That was Stuart. But we also heard from Sam. She was a retired head teacher, and she talked about the kids who they had to feed because when they call social services saying these kids aren't being fed, they don't care.
And there are some people who really do deserve support, and they tend to be the ones that fall through the cracks. A lot of people in universal credit keep themselves in universal credit, and they will only work part-time up to the set number of hours, so they don't upset the universal credit. They could work and earn more.
No, you're not allowed to say this, because this can't possibly be true, because that would imply that people make really rational choices, that earning an extra 10 or 20 quid a week in terms of actually going out to work for those extra 3 days, as opposed to the 2 you do to get onto all these benefits, that they would be worth their while. Because you and I would think we'd do that because it'd be a future life. No, for an awful lot of people, if you're going to be on minimum wage the rest of your life and a job you hate, why on earth would you go out to work for that extra money when you could be on universal credit? When we talk about the working poor, we're actually often, a lot of the time, talking about people who are choosing not to do full-time work. Or you hear these people go, oh, she works 3 jobs. Yeah, like one of them is 1 day a week, one of them's 3 hours a day. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, you know, and no, I don't just rack up for 3 hours.
The way the benefit system is structured, it forces people into a position where economically they can't work over a certain number of hours, because it would take them then an almost exponential number of hours to get what they're getting free.
So they stick to the 16 hours, then I think it's raised to 24. But there are massive, and Fraser Nelson, ex of The Spectator, now of The Times, did a fantastic documentary about this, exposing what happens with incapacity, sickness benefits and how people are pushed onto those. There's definitely a massive issue there. We don't want kids to suffer because the parents are just lazy, feckless, useless, goodness knows what. But as the head teacher who you spoke to earlier pointed out, and so many experts I've spoken to over the years have said to me, there are just so many parents who don't do the right thing for their kids. They don't feed them. They don't feed them anything. They have to scrounge around for stuff. If they do get food, it's a plate of chips. It's from the local takeaway. They're sitting there with their fags and their can of lager and some weed. Who are we kidding? And their laptop open watching, on gambling, but they haven't got money to feed their kids. But the solution there isn't to feed the child. The solution there is to get the child out of that home, isn't it?
Exactly.
Isn't that the solution?
It's to do that. It's to change the benefit system. It's not to throw more cash at what they're going to then plug as a vote winner in by-elections and everything else.
I don't think those people vote by the way.
Well, they might vote, but
those are people who wouldn't even know who the Prime Minister is.
But it'll be seen by others as they're doing good, and therefore it'll get those that want to vote for them. They're
but
doing
no
this
child is living in poverty in this country
No.
unless something is going horribly wrong. In each case,
there'll be a small minority.
There is a small again. And again, we look at the problems when we see people when they go on to benefits and that absurd 5-week wait. Most people who are earning full time don't have 5 weeks income sitting in their bank account in savings. People on high incomes don't have that sort of money, let alone people who are living hand to mouth. And I've always thought that as a massive issue with universal credit. But people who end up at food banks, again, I've got a friend who works at Bedport office. She used to give out the vouchers for the food banks. Look at some of the people are in dire need, but they're in dire need because they're waiting for benefits. Women who've left abusive partners and the like with the kids. We need to be making sure those people get all the help they need to set themselves up again. But at the end of the day, and there are people who are very, on disability and incapacity benefits and whatever they're called this week, who are really struggling financially, and we need to make sure those kids are helped and they are helped. But if the answer is that they haven't got enough money to pay for the school lunches, surely we just need to make sure their benefits are higher. If we want to be a civilised society, what we're admitting here is that there are some parents who are just too darn lazy, feckless, heartless to look after their kids properly. We need to deal with that.
Well, and it also creates this gimme, gimme, gimme society. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to take responsibility. Society's going to do it for me. Well, that's not how life works.
Well, it shouldn't be. And the more we do...
Well, the kids will grow up in that environment. And that doesn't then set them life lessons right. And therefore they will perpetuate it.
Now, listen,
we have to stop this.
We talk about immigration an awful lot, do we not? And there's various stories about that. We discussed them in the last hour. I think we can do this quite briefly because I'm just going to ask you a straightforward question. Keir Starmer is planning a crackdown on migrants exploiting the right to family life under Article 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights. They're talking about the French are going to intercept migrant boats for the first time, changing the rules on that. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, is looking at reviving a Rwanda-style scheme, but also looking at a review into whether we stay in the European Convention of Human Rights. Will any of these things, A, happen, and B, change anything?
No.
Moving on.
No, there is a positive story here for the government. Keir has smashed a gang.
What?
Keir has smashed a gang.
Really?
It was on the BBC 2 days ago.
I did see this.
And it's a gang of Botswanans people smugglers. So the whole problem is going to be solved. They have smuggled a grand total of 200 people into the country.
200 people is still quite a lot.
Well, that's
only 4 boats.
That's less than 20% of what comes in on a daily basis at the moment.
Yeah, this is a fair point. I just think, do you know what? I think whatever the government announces on this, and I think actually whatever even Kemi Badenoch announces on this as Tory leader, I just don't think any of it's going to wash with anyone at all. People are not going to believe or trust anything from any of the two major parties until action is seen. You're going to actually have to see those numbers come massively down. You're going to have to see interceptions. We're going to have to see it in the Channel. We're going to have to see the courts not letting foreign criminals who are paedophiles and murderers and rapists stay in the country.
Yeah, there's a simple answer. Someone comes in and across the beaches, they go into a holding camp. That holding camp, they then bus to the airport and they're taken off somewhere else. Oh, like Rwanda. Or wherever is
Works
next.
Works for me. Let's talk about someone dealing with things in a rather different way in terms of unwanted people coming in to the country. Donald Trump, he's followed a policy which he actually carried out in 2017, much to the horror of everybody. But he banned people from Muslim countries. Yeah, I mean, it was a blatantly, openly... anti-Muslim policy. This time round, being a bit more thinking through. But Donald Trump has signed a new travel ban targeting 12 countries. This is following in particular, I mean, it was obviously long planned, but a terror attack in Colorado by a man who'd arrived from Egypt and was not supposed to be in the country. He'd overstayed a visa and he committed a blatant anti-Semitic terror attack. And again, hey, the media keep reporting on a pro-Israeli demonstration. It wasn't. It was a rally for freeing the hostages.
Yep.
That's not the same thing, guys. But the ban targets the nationals of Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Yemen. And it's going to take in effect on June the 9th. I mean, I'd add to that probably Pakistan, probably Bangladesh as well, quite a few other countries. But those are basically the basket case countries he has talked about before. There's a partial ban placed on travellers from 7 more countries: Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan and Venezuela. And he's basically saying these are countries where... not some are predominantly Muslim, not all of them are though, but basically said we will not let what happened in Europe happen in America, where we have seen mass migration to this country. I don't know about you. I'm thinking we should follow suit.
Yep, sounds fair to me. And he's put an exemption in there for those that are sports individuals travelling for either the World Cup or the Olympics. So he's not impacting those. However, I think that's fair. We should be doing the same. And
there are some countries for which we have particular problems. Yeah. If you look at the criminal records, the rate of crime from different nationals of different countries, I think pretty much all of those countries on that main list are the countries that we also have a problem with, where the crime rate is off the scale compared to Brits and indeed migrants from, say, America or France.
Yeah. And I'd add countries that we've got sanctions out against as well. So Russia, ban Russians from coming in. That would cause a bit of a stir in places.
I thought we did anyway, no?
No, there's still people in Russian passports are moving around.
Oh, I think they arrive via third countries, don't they?
Different routes,
yes.
and all the rest.
Yeah, we should have a better system of that.
But of course, Donald Trump cites the incident that happened in the United States with the Egyptian national. Egypt isn't on the list.
Yes, but he said he's considering Egypt.
Yeah.
So obviously this is something that was planned more. But there is an argument to say, look, and the argument is not like, we don't like people from this country. We cannot vet the people. There are too many security lapses. There are too many people who could pose a threat or pose an issue criminally or terrorist-wise. We cannot vet these people. These are not functioning countries with decent systems where there is horrific levels of corruption and the like. So we're not going to allow people to come until unless or until we can sort things out. I think an awful lot of British people would support that.
Yeah. I think it's fair. I think we should follow suit. Donald Trump every now and again comes up with something that is quite sensible. Not very often. But,
people will say, and it'll be challenged in the courts and they may well win, that, you can't just ban people as a whole. But we do that all the time. You have visa restrictions. I need a visa to go into certain countries or not certain countries. Yeah. I mean, this is the norm. Yeah. You don't have a right to go to any country in the world that you want.
Exactly. It's a privilege to get into the country. And when you read the rest of Donald Trump's statement, there are exemptions. So if people are fleeing because of persecution, if they're religious minorities, if there's conflict, and they can prove that, they can still apply for asylum and come in that way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is fascinating, isn't it? Let's also just talk. I've just got to do this too. I love the fact that when I raised this with you before the show, you looked at me in absolute sort of perplexed. What are you talking about? Harry and Meghan. For no good reason at all, other than the fact that it's their daughter Lilibet's 4th birthday. They've put out some pictures of Meghan with their daughter. You never see her face properly, but that's their choice. Got no issue with them doing that. They want privacy for their kids, the safety of their kids, got no issue. But they also decided, for some bizarre reason, put out a video of them sort of twerking and doing a dance, sort of TikTok-style dance, in a delivery suite in a hospital when their daughter was a week overdue. My daughter was overdue. Don't remember filming a video. I remember being in labour then, going into labour. But I don't understand why she's in why is she in a delivery suite of her babies if she's not in labour? I find that a bit weird. But also, you've done a video. Oh, fine, you want to pass the time and do a video. I mean, do what you want. Fill your boots. I don't care. Some good dancing there, But why would you put out such a private, intimate thing? They put out in their Netflix series, for which they got paid millions, they put out a video after he just proposed of this moment. For people who claim they wanted privacy, for people he's constantly suing the media about intrusions into his privacy, and yet he and she intrude on their own privacy, their own most intimate couple and family moments, whenever it feels like it's useful for publicity. I'm sort of repulsed by this.
I don't really care.
I mean, he has a fair point.
Yeah, I really, you know, it's...
They can do what they want.
It's not easy. They can do what they want. They're showing hypocrisy by, you know, trying to sue everyone for private life, and then they're putting
I have the
private
right
life
to intrude on my own privacy, but you don't have the right to intrude on my privacy.
But also you've got
it is hypocritical.
Yeah, you've got the right within your own privacy to release things that are private about you at a time and place of your choosing, rather than someone else coming in and stealing it. So yeah, they can do that.
They have the right to. I'm just saying that when you talk about you want privacy, you don't want to be doing anything. You know, you don't want to be in the public eye, and you constantly sell your soul, your marriage, your family life, your home life, and your children's birth. I don't know. I've got such a big issue with celebrities, which is all they are now.
Yeah.
I always said this from the day she got it. She was in. And everyone said, "Oh, she's a breath of fresh air." So you know, and I said no, because she thinks she understands celebrity, not royal life.
Yeah.
Now, he understands both, but he's now in the celebrity world. When you're a royal, the whole point of royals is it's not new every day. You know, I mean, you know, what does Kate do? You know, the Princess of Wales, she just wears a slightly different dress and a different colour. Does her hair slightly differently, but basically it's the same every day. She does the same thing. We barely hear her speak. It's all very solid. That's what the royal family is about. If you're a monarchist, it's the continuity. If you want to be a celebrity, you have to reinvent yourself. You have to do something new. You have to share a bit more. Whether it's more breast or more bum, if you're a Kardashian, or if it's new outfit, you have to share more about your life. Eventually, we're going to get the birth video. We're going to get the birth video, because she's going to have nothing left to sell to us, to say, look at me, talk about me. And the worst thing about this is, Philip, I'm talking about her.
Well, exactly.
I'm ashamed of myself.
And that's why I think I'd far rather we just let them get on with what they want to do. It's not.
We can all agree that no one ever mentions them again. Exactly. I'd happily do that.
And they're purely celebrities now. Harry's not a working royal. Yes, he's got a title. He's got the birthright and all the rest of it. He's done good for the country.
Yep.
He's an individual that is still suffering mentally, and you can see that.
He's got PTSD.
You can see that in his eyes, 100%.
And there's someone who suffered it yourself.
Yeah, and he's been sucked into the celebrity lifestyle. So we should leave them.
Can I say they're great response? I don't care. 11:22 is the time. I want to hear from you about stuff we should care about, and that our tax is being used to pay for free school meals for kids whose parents, I think, can afford it. Yeah, but do we want to pay even for the kids whose parents say they can't afford it? Maybe we should sort out the fact that they can't afford it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. This is Talk.
We've discovered a £30 million bridge to nowhere in Lincolnshire County Council, run by the Tories, believe it or not. So much for their competence, and the waste everywhere is shocking. The question is how much of it we can cut out quite quickly. So I'm very happy to stand on our track record as successful business people. I don't think Mr. Stride has run a multi-billion-pound multinational business listed on the stock market where the share price tripled in 4 years under, guess what? Under my stewardship.
Across across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. 11:25 is the time. Coming up in the next half hour, we're going to be talking to the brilliant Carl Hennigan about those weight loss jabs and risks for women who don't want to get pregnant or who are pregnant, who are taking them. Also, we're going to be talking more about the free school meals issue. Lots of your calls coming in. There's hundreds of thousands more children, 500,000 in total, we're told by the Education Secretary, will get access to free school meals. It will save parents £500 a year. It'll be eligible for any child whose parents are on universal credit. But given you can get universal credit up to £40,000 plus income, why are we paying for those kids to get free school meals? Can't the parents pay for it themselves? Your thoughts very, very welcome. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Also lots of messages coming in on that as well. Let's go to James, who says, parenting is a full-time job. I'm sorry, but you're either up for it or not. Tough luck. Alexander says, I give both my children breakfast before they leave for school. Taking responsibility from parents and giving it to the government will end in tears, just like it always does. This, of course, is free school lunches, not the free school breakfast they're already getting. And Timothy says, I think free at primary only. I don't have kids, so I'm biased where my taxes go. Feed your own children, says Henry. Simple message. Let's go to Jennifer, who is in Upminster and wants to have her say. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello.
What do you want to say, my love?
Well, it's just about the free school meals.
Yeah.
I just want to say that, you know, I'm 68 years old, and there were 5 of us when I was young. And my mother couldn't afford school meals, so we were given school meals.
Yeah.
Now that I'm an adult, I'm, you know, so when I was young, other people paid for my school meals.
Yeah.
I'm older now, so I'm paying for other children's school meals.
Okay.
And I think that's the way it is.
That's the system. You pay in, you get. Okay, so and was your mum a single mum?
No, well, Julia, you could say she was a single mother because my father was useless. He just provided the sperm. My mother worked as a nurse, as an auxiliary nurse, 7 nights on, 7 nights off. 7 nights on, 7 nights off. My father didn't work at all, so you could say she was a single mother.
So right, so but that was the reason why the family couldn't afford lunches for you. The solution, I mean, again, I'm glad you got your free lunches you wouldn't have otherwise got. The solution, of course, would have been your dad being required to work, but, you know, obviously I don't know how we would do that. In terms of the kids getting them now, I mean, no one would want a child whose family are struggling financially to go hungry, or indeed a child whose parents are just utter hopeless, useless, negligent or abusive parents. Let's not punish the child who needs a full, you know, a breakfast and a lunch to actually, you know, be able to learn at school and perhaps escape that life. But what about the parental responsibility and requiring those parents to do their job? What about the kids whose parents are on a total of 40 grand? There's no family on 40 grand can't afford to feed their kid lunch.
I know. But you see, the thing is that you can't sieve out the people, you know, even these people that are all that money, Julia, I still think that some of them, those children, would still go to school hungry. So just let's feed them.
Okay, those kids, I think you're right. I think a lot of those, you give 500 quid, I know where that's going to go. It's going to go on the bookies and, you know, in the local newsagent to buy fags and the local offie to buy booze. But should we be leaving children in homes with parents who spend their money like that and don't feed their kids?
Well, the thing is that, you know, you see, it depends, you see. You know, we've seen when children go into social care, you know, they're preyed on by these grooming gangs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you've got to find out if that is safer than where they are. You know,
there is that. I mean, we know the outcomes for kids from care are very bad, but what are they compared to the kids who are living in their homes where no one even bothers to feed you or nappy trains you or teach you how to clean your teeth? I mean, I would have thought there's lots of evidence that it could actually be better from care. But we haven't got any spaces to put all these kids in. There are too many of them. But I do wonder about the parents who said, look, you know, we're going to have to take your kid into care because you're just simply not feeding them. If a parent actually cared for their child and loved their child, wouldn't that be a wake-up call? You'd like to think. Jennifer, I really appreciate your call. Very, very interesting perspective. As someone who had free school meals yourself, happy to pay for them now. Ian, though, is in Northern Ireland. Don't think you're quite so happy about paying for school meals, though, Ian.
No, absolutely. So a bit of a background, 24 years in the British Army, 6 op tours, left in 2016, got a job, was made redundant first year out. Thought, I've never claimed a thing in my life. I had a young child. I was really panicking. I went to the dole office for the first time in 27 years.
Yeah.
I got £75 every 2 weeks because my wife worked.
Yeah.
This is true, for 6 months. And I worked it out. I paid more in tax during an op tour out of this country, fighting for this country, than I got back from the country when I desperately needed it.
Yeah.
The place is a disgrace how they treat people. I was sat in the dole office, and I said to the lady, the interview, when I was trying to get trying to sort out what I needed to do, she said, I said, I'm not going to be here long. I said, I promise you I will work. I'll do any job. And I went digging trenches for a labourer. And she said to me, oh, you're so not the norm, Mr. Thomas.
Oh, yes. My mate works in a benefit office, says you can always tell the people who want to work. I said, how? And she goes, because you don't see them again. That's always the giveaway. OK, so when you were on the dole, did you have enough money, and your wife was working, did you have enough money to feed your kids?
We always fed our children, because they're our children. They're not your responsibility. And if you can't afford them, don't have them. I'm sorry. That's the same as Philip probably there. I've been around the world and I've seen real child poverty.
That is the key thing. When we talk about, the media today is littered with all these people, hand-wringing about, child poverty. Do we have child poverty in this country?
No. Julia, I did 2 tours of Bosnia, and I tell you what, that is child poverty. That is horrific. And those children, I've always said I'd like to go back, because they have come full circle now, and people are going there on holiday, and I'm very proud of what we did in Bosnia.
Absolutely.
But I look at people moaning about what they haven't got, and they all seem to have new iPhones, they all seem to have Sky dishes. If I can't afford it, I don't buy it, and I instill that in my children. I'm not prepared anymore to pay for feckless people who stay at home, and it's a career choice to stay at home.
Again, I'm afraid to tell you that an awful lot, certainly, I don't even think just on the left, but the left or the right, but the sort of the metropolitan classes just think that, no, of course no one would ever do that, because they just literally don't understand. Ian, very good call. Thank you very much. Again, all the calls today, absolutely extraordinary on this, all really different perspectives. Philip, you were nodding along to what Ian was saying.
Oh, I agree with him 100%. We have seen real child poverty. We've seen real family poverty, and actually in families where they genuinely have nothing and they're living in the rubble, the mothers are feeding their kids before they're feeding themselves. We see the pictures that are coming out of Gaza.
All those huge big women who are going to the food banks that the BBC always finds.
Well, exactly.
I've had to miss a meal, have you?
Yeah, but again, we see pictures coming out of Gaza where a mother is perfectly healthy and slightly overweight, and the child is emaciated, and they're saying that the child is starving. Well, no, it's not. And this is where the media has got some responsibility with the level of influence it's putting out there to try and suggest that things are wrong when they're not.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. Indeed, love to hear your thoughts. Get in touch, 0344 499 1000. Up next, we are going to take a quick break, and we'll be talking to Carl Hennigan about the latest concerns over these fat jabs. First, though, we are giving you the chance to win FIFA Club World Cup final tickets. That's thanks to our friends at DAZN. Here's everything you need to know.
Hi, it's Jim White here. Here at talkSPORT, we're gearing up for the Club World Cup in the United States. And to celebrate, we've got 2 tickets to the final in New York on July the 13th to give away. We'll sort flights, accommodation, and give you £5,000 spending money to spend however you like. 18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. All you have to do to enter is text the word football to 83338 by the 13th of June at 11 p.m. and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or send your name and number by post to Club World Cup Final Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on June the 18th.
This is a TalkSPORT limited competition run on TalkSPORT Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Do not miss out on this incredible giveaway. That's thanks to our friends over at DAZN. Very good luck. Take a quick break. Back in a moment. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:37 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram still with me. And I'd like to be joined now by Carl Hennigan, Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at the University of Oxford, to talk about fat jabs. Oh, and the latest concerns about how safe they are. Very, very good morning to you, Carl.
Good morning, Julia.
Very first guest I had on fat jabs when they were all in the news about these miracle cures for weight gain. Everyone loses weight. They're brilliant. They're safe. They save you from everything else. They're a miracle. Was you. And you were basically telling us about the actual studies carried out by the likes of the Mounjaros and the Wegovy's and the Ozempic that actually didn't show quite such a good picture in terms of their ability to achieve people's weight loss and sustain it. But more and more concerns have been raised about some very unpleasant side effects, not just, the apparently constant diarrhea and bad breath and the like, but other issues as well. Now a really very serious concern about women whose contraceptive pill may be interfered with by the impact, particularly of Mounjaro, the most common drug people are using, but also of pregnant women and women who are breastfeeding and the risk to their babies. Tell us what the research suggests.
Well, I think you'll find, Julia, last time we spoke, we mentioned this because it's already in the summary of the product characteristics and the patient information leaflet.
Right.
What animal studies showed is there was an increase in fetal abnormalities and an increase in pregnancy loss. And what the issue is, in humans, the data is extremely limited. So the advice is always...
Because they don't test on pregnant women, funnily enough.
Well, what happens is you throw it out there like now and your words were the game changer and then you see what happens. So what's happening is women are becoming the experiment. And because they can buy this online, they can go out and get that freely, that actually they're not getting the right advice. And the advice has always been that actually you should take contraception 2 months before, and actually you should not take this whatsoever during pregnancy. The issue now is with the Mounjaro is they're saying, well, actually it has an effect on the contraception, so you need to take a non-oral contraception for at least 4 weeks when you start this treatment. But the problem here is they say the MHRA are now coming to the party late as ever.
This is the Medicines and Healthcare Regulatory Agency.
They should not be bought without a prior consultation. But you can go online today. You can find that it's on sale. It's been reduced from £210 to £125.
Oh, wow.
You get it with no appointment, no GP visit is necessary. And our supermarkets have doctors now that make this available. So what we're seeing here is the rise of the conflict of interest and the big industry with the amount of money being made here is in the billions. This is being put out there to a wider spectrum of people, and women in particular are using this in an unregulated fashion. We have significant problems. In addition, since we last spoke, Julia, the evidence has come out that, yes, while people are on this drug, they actually do lose weight, like they do with all sorts of slimming programs. But about 8 months after they finish, guess what? They're back to where they started.
Just 8 months later.
Yeah.
I know so many people who have just started it and people who have used it. I'll say, oh, you look well. Yeah, I've been using, a fat jab. And people are always just absolutely thrilled. But again, the evidence from the company's own trials was very clear, was that people would put the weight back on. And I thought the most telling things was pension companies. I mean, actuaries, I'm sure exactly the same as well. The people who have to basically deal with the outcomes of whether people are living longer, living healthier, or living shorter lives, is that they have not changed any of their payments on the basis, well, obviously people are losing weight, they're keeping the weight off, they're not getting heart disease, not getting cancer, they're not getting diabetes, they're living longer. We're going to have to cut some of those pension annuities because basically we're going to have to be paying it for longer. They deal with the actual facts. Well, they don't think people are going to live longer. So again, even when the NHS and the health secretary say, oh, we should be giving this out on the NHS because this will help people to be healthier and live longer. Well, it doesn't look like it will work unless people stay on these drugs forever. And of course, the cost of that, and crucially also the side effects, the long-term impact of that, never been tested.
So one thing is, NICE says the recommendations is you shouldn't go on it for longer than 2 years, so you can't get it on prescription, because if you haven't changed your lifestyle and lost the weight and changed everything and you're exercising more, you can't stay on it forever.
Well, you can get it online.
Yeah, but that's what it's per prescription. So actually you're going to force people online to get it. That's the problem. Second is, the longer you're on it, the adverse events, the more serious ones get greater, like pancreatitis. But third, everything is linked. Your previous call was about children and the free school meal. We have an obesity crisis that is starting in children, and we have to have a strategy that says, in young children, we need to get them out there healthier and fitter and exercising. That's where I'd be putting my money.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. We've even had people debating whether or not these drugs should be given to children. Well, I mean, my God, well, these are the same people who were talking about giving the COVID jab to children when even there was no medical evidence whatsoever for healthy children. It is extraordinary how often a pharmaceutical solution is often sought rather than the simple practical solutions of, eat less, exercise more. And even when they were saying, even if you don't lose weight with these jabs, the benefits are still good for cancer risk, heart disease, diabetes and all that. But actually, eating less and exercising more is good for so much more, all these other aspects of your body, bone density, your mental health. I mean, I've certainly in the last 10 years been so much more physically active than I used to be. And you just feel so much better for it. Your whole body feels different. Your head feels different.
We'll be putting you forward for Public Health Director in charge of medicine in a minute,
As
Julie.
long as I can still have my white wine and my Prosecco, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. But interestingly, what you end up with is a perverse incentive where people say, oh, to get this prescription, you have to have a BMI of 40. I'm going to eat my way to there, and then I'm going to take the medication. And that's how we fuel society with this approach that there's a simple fix around the corner. It is not simple, and we need to have a strategy that starts with what you're talking about, is in childhood, moving through our adolescence and into adulthood, people need to exercise and be healthier. It's not rocket science. Keep it simple, but we have to all contribute to the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, there's a difference between someone, a man or a woman making a decision about their own body and it's legal. You know what? If you don't want to read up on this properly, you don't want to pay attention, you don't want to live healthily, you want to take the drug, you know what? I don't know why it's my problem. The pharmaceutical companies are going to tell us whatever they want to tell us to make as you say, billions upon billions that they are making from these drugs and trying to get them on the NHS, get them to everybody. And what they really want, as we know, pharmaceutical companies, the El Dorado is always a drug that people can get on for life. That's where the real money is being made. They don't want to cure people. You don't get money for curing people. You get money for people on drugs permanently. But when it's unborn babies, when it's newborn babies being breastfed, I find it extraordinary there hasn't been more clear warning about this. I mean, as someone who lost 4 babies to miscarriage, and I'm always amazed by how casual people can be about what drugs they will take. And I had terrible morning sickness, as in absolutely couldn't lift my head without throwing up for months and months on end. But why don't you take a drug? Yeah, well, the last time they did a drug for that was called thalidomide, and I wanted my baby to be safe. We're told, don't even take paracetamol unless you really, really need it. And then women are giving themselves a drug for weight loss while pregnant. That's insane.
So we've had a real wake-up call recently with, you go about thalidomide, it's actually today sodium valproate in epilepsy, doubled the risk of congenital malformations. It took 20 years for the regulator to get its act together and say, look, we've got to stop giving this to women of childbearing age, not women who are wanting to get pregnant.
But who might get pregnant.
So I suspect what will happen here, this will take a long time before the warnings come out and say women of childbearing age shouldn't take this drug.
There'll have to be legal cases. There'll have to be some children who were born or deformed or before that. That's what's so awful and tragic about this. Carl, you've been fantastic on this issue. People need to know more of the facts, and everyone's just walking around going, oh, this is a miracle drug. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. Carl Hennigan, Professor of Evidence-Based Medicine at the University of Oxford. Thank you. Philip Ingram, being tempted at all?
Well, any drug that you put inside...
That sounds like a rude question. I don't mean it in that way.
Any drug that you put into yourself will have side effects. And whenever the body's going through huge changes through pregnancy and all the rest of it. The dangers are significant, and a lot of the things, the way the body chemistry works, isn't properly understood. And the drug companies certainly don't research it.
They don't test it on pregnant women for a reason.
So you shouldn't take anything really without very, very careful supervision by doctors.
Exercise more. There you go. 11:46. It's cheaper as well. That 11:46 is the time. Up next, going to talk to former head teacher and chairman of the Campaign for Real Education, Chris McGovern, about free school meals being handed out to another 500,000 more kids on your and my dime. This is Talk.
If they all chose and they were allowed to ditch the burqa, not wear anything, but wear just, you can see all their faces, they wear normal clothes. If that happened, would you personally like that?
If that happened, I would be happy because that means that women are given the opportunity to make their own choice. That's the argument I go back to. Ultimately, the argument that Jess is making is ignoring the voice of the actual women that are being affected. You're assuming their position. You're assuming
I'm not assuming their position
and it's completely not evidence-based at all.
I'll tell you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:49 is the time. Philip Grimstall with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. And I know we always get common sense from my next guest on every school issue. Chris McGovern joins us, chairman of the Campaign for Real Education and indeed a former head teacher himself. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, genuinely, I couldn't call which way you're going to go on this story, actually. I'm intrigued to know. But with hundreds of thousands more children are going to get free school meals and an announcement from the Bridget what is that? That's now awful, I forgot. Phillipson. I was thinking Nicholson. No, it's not Nicholson. Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, basically looking at an extra 500 quid's worth of free school meals at lunchtime, loads of free school meals when it comes to breakfast already, handed out to more parents if they are claiming universal credit. So not just the kids on the very lowest incomes, but indeed children whose parents' incomes reach over £40,000. You can still get universal credit, would be eligible for this. She says this will be helping children to learn. It's better for teachers, better for kids, better for the other kids as well, because these kids are able to learn, and it will help those parents on low income. So is this a good idea and a good use of public money, Chris?
Well, first of all, they're not free. Of course, the taxpayer's paying for these meals.
£1 billion over 3 years.
Yeah, I must say that when I took over an educational charity, we took over a failing school in a poor area, and one of the first things we did was to provide the children with a breakfast because the children were hungry. But yes, I welcome the fact that children will not go hungry. Of course, every sensible person should. But we have to ask the question, are we here dealing with just the symptoms of a problem? What's the cause of the fact that so many children are coming to school hungry? And then we have to look at what's going on in parents' homes. When I took over this failing school, we had some parents, I have to say, were feckless and who were fighting at the school gate, were on drugs and were unemployable. But there are other parents, working class parents, you might say, who didn't necessarily have jobs, but who desperately wanted to help their children. Yeah. But they themselves had been through our education system. They themselves were semi-literate, semi-numerous. They couldn't help their children, even if they wanted to. But they're not going to come on your show and say, look, I can't read and write. Yeah. So actually, probably, we would be better. Well, yes, we've got to feed children, of course, but we've got to give parents the ability to get a job so they're employable, so they can then feed their own children, because that ultimately the state cannot become the parent. The parents have to
and
look
this
after
is the concern. And I think everyone listening and watching will say, yeah, of course we don't want any child going hungry, whatever the reason why their parents, whether they're using the money on fags or booze, or they just literally can't cope with their finances at all. No one wants a child to go hungry. We know how vital a healthy meal is, whether it's breakfast or lunch, for the school day, for them actually being able to learn. And there is a benefit to everyone else's child, because you haven't got a kid who's being disruptive and holding the class back. And you'll understand that more as somebody who's been in the classroom directly dealing with that. But again, this is where so many of us do share concerns, and a lot of our audience are saying this, and certainly my guest Philip Ingram as well, that we are just taking over so many of the jobs of parents. Where does it end? There's no parent in this country who can't afford to give their kid a breakfast. And I'm not talking about a full fry up. I mean, who gives their kid that? A bit of cereal with some milk and or a slice of toast. No kid needs to go to school hungry because of finances in this country. I simply don't accept that. But lunch is a little bit more expensive. We're looking at an average price of £2.65 a day. It's about 500 quid a year. That is a big chunk out of a lot of parents' salaries. But are we really saying a lot of those parents couldn't afford it if they were required to pay for it? What about taking that 500 out of their benefits and giving it directly to the school to pay for the education? Wouldn't that be a better solution?
It's true, and most parents, let's be honest, will put their children first, but not all parents will. Some parents can be quite feckless. Look, if you look around the world, and we shouldn't confine this to Britain, we see countries which are far poorer than Britain, parents earning far less, and yet they are investing in their children's education in a big way by supporting them at home. Yeah. Countries such as Vietnam, which is we would classify in the old language as a third world country, even large parts of China, the parents are heavily involved in their education, and those countries are now outperforming the UK. Yeah. So you're right to say the parents' position is absolutely crucial. We depend far too much on the state. Parents have to be made more responsible. If I were Secretary of State, yes, I would make sure children are fed, but I would also make sure that parents who haven't been educated well by the state system can go back to school or to college and learn how to read and write. That would be a way out of it. So it's no good just dealing with the symptoms. Yeah. You have to deal with the underlying cause. Why are parents so dependent on the state? Yeah. That's an illness in our society. We've got to get over it. And we don't have a choice in this, Julia, because the rest of the world, particularly in the Asia Pacific, they're outperforming us. It's not a choice. We have to help parents to help themselves.
And we've got there's so little excuse for this. Again, actually, an awful lot of immigrant parents. I mean, one of the reasons why, for instance, London, the capital city's education results have gone up in recent years. It's not just some of those reforms from Michael Gove and others. It's actually, they went up until lockdown, obviously, is a lot of immigrant kids with parents, particularly, Indian and Chinese parents, where family and education are the two biggest values, and they're pushing those kids. Some of these kids of parents who don't even speak the language themselves, but absolutely understanding that this is what their kids need to get ahead in their new country. I mean, all in favour of that, are we not? But this is the thing. A lot of these parents, let's be honest though, there'll be the people who just can't cope, things aren't going well, but there'll be also parents who just don't really care. And they have their kids to get the extra benefit, and they spend it on the fags and the drugs and the booze. Those parents exist. I know those parents exist. For some bizarre reason, politicians largely don't seem to think those parents exist. But every teacher I've spoken to will deal with that. I've got a friend who's a head of a inner city school, and he has, a lot of parents like that. What do we do about them? Should we be leaving a child in a home where no one bothers to feed them?
Well, yes. I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right about the parents of immigrant children. Immigrants are a success story. Too often, the problem of immigration is seen as only a problem. But actually, just as the Irish or the Italians or the Poles went to America in the 19th century and then built that country, so the immigrants in this country are a success story. Children work very hard, the parents push them. It is the white working class who are underperforming. How do you resolve that? Well, it's with great difficulty, because those white working class are themselves products of an underperforming education system. So I come back to this point. You have to help the parents, give them the skills to help their children. Bridget Phillipson, idealistic, yes, good to feed children, of course, but deal with the problem and look at why it is in other countries, parents who have no money or very little money can achieve so highly. And they achieve so highly because they, like our immigrant population, they support their children and will do anything for their children. We have to change the mindset, and it's difficult, but we've got to do something about helping parents to help themselves.
You're right, we always seem to deal with the symptoms. We always think, if in doubt, throw more money at the problem. Well, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown did that for a decade. I'm not sure it worked out very well for anybody. Really good to talk to you, as always. Chris McGovern, Chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Philip Ingram, what do you make of what Chris says?
Well, I think he talks complete common sense, and I think we should go one step further. And any parent on any level of income should be able to apply for free school meals. But to get there, you have to go through a formal parental assessment and, if necessary, parental training. So you're trained how to bring your children up. If you've got...
I have a friend who actually runs a charity that they used to train people in business, and they moved into running the charitable side, training parents who literally just don't know how to parent because they've not been parented. They're not bad people. They just no one's told them how to do it.
And Chris is 100% right. There are parents now who've grown up without the parental skills because their parents didn't give them, and their kids are not going to get the same.
But we're going to have another cycle, more and more and more and more. Eventually, we're all going to be the underclass, aren't we?
And then there's no discipline in the schools, and there's no respect for authority in society. And
but that's because the kids are coming in from homes where they don't understand.
Because the parents don't understand.
You're on a bus or a train, and some kid loud foot on the seat, the seats, or they're playing the music loud. You say, "Would you mind?" And they look at you like you're an alien. Like no one has ever told them no before. No one has ever said that's not acceptable behaviour. We are living in a world where we need to deal with that. We need to sort of come back down on all of that because no one in the parental home is doing that.
I'm a big bloke. They take their feet off the seats.
I'd love to travel around with you on the train. That would be so much more fun. I mean, they usually do what I do. I've got a good headmistressy tone. But who would want to be a teacher and having to deal with all of that?
And it's whenever you're asking the children nicely to take their feet off the seats, you're always watching to see if there's going to be a knife pulled or anything else. And that's the way society is. And that's because simple things like school uniforms not disciplined, there's no discipline in schools, parents don't know how to be parents, there's no discipline at home. We need to fix society.
We've got a problem with parents who need the supermarkets to remove sweets from near the till because they don't know how to say no to their kids. I mean, it's easy. No. There you go, done. I literally don't understand when people say things like that. I'm like, I just don't even begin to get what they mean with that. Like, grow a backbone or don't have kids. But there we are. There's so much more I want to talk about. We've got lots more top guests coming in the next hour. Lots more of your fantastic calls today. Do keep them coming in. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call on this. Particularly if you had free school meals yourself. Maybe your child is on free school meals. You don't have to give your own name if you don't want to, but give us a call. I'd love to hear from you. This is Talk.
Ghost train.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer, is also still with me, and great to have your company as well, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, and some fantastic calls. So appreciate you getting in touch today. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say, asking you particularly about 500,000 more children who are going to get free school meals by the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson's announcement today. Even if their parents earn over £40,000 a year. So it's not just those on the lowest incomes. And lots of kids, you know, really families are struggling, are not eligible for those free school meals. But you could be earning your parents 40 grand a year, their income. A lot of it will be benefits, but they'll have 40 grand a year if they're on universal credit, up to that figure, and they can still get free school meals on Your and My tab. It's going to cost £1 billion over 3 years. Is that a good use of public money, Your and My taxpayers' money? As I say, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. You can also, of course, leave a message on our YouTube page. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. Philip, before we go to our next guest, and I do want to talk about lots of international affairs and what's going on, because we've got so much more to talk about. But it's just been announced, we've had this NATO meeting of NATO defence ministers in Brussels, included by the US Secretary of Defence, Peter Hegseth, who has been very open about, he thinks that European countries, members of NATO and other countries should be paying their fair share of NATO's capability, and he wants a 5% of GDP. We know that Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, former European Prime Minister, is pushing for that as well. It's been announced in the last few moments that Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, will be meeting with the NATO Secretary General on Monday. We've just had this big debate about moving defence spending from 2.3% to 2.5%, an ambition, a target, who knows what, to 3% sometime in the next decade. A lot of people putting out that it's way too little, way too late. Now there's 5% on the cards. The question is, if we did go to 5%, 3.5% of that would be defence, and then other cyber and border security issues. Have we even got the money? What sort of sums are we talking about there?
Oh, we're talking huge sums. Over periods of time, you're talking tens of billions more coming into defence. You're talking about getting up to 3%. But if it's done the right way, where you get that 1.5% invested in not just security, but into defence manufacturing and wider security manufacturing, that can be used, as the Chancellor has started saying, to underpin growth. Because you're going to create new jobs in the UK, you're going to create new requirements for people to go through university, you're going to create more tax revenue coming in. And if it's done in a clever way, it will underpin that growth. But we're in such a difficult position at the moment across the world, where if we don't pay that, the costs that could hit us very easily, if the conflicts develop into either larger regional conflicts or a global conflict, we're going to think 5% is cheap. And Mark Rutte's been saying this for months and months and months. He said this long before the Defence Review was published, and long before the Defence Review were told to go from 2.3 to 2.5.
They're going to have to, I mean, again, I agree with you 100%. Again, it's going to be 8% if we're at war, and everyone thinks that is a very real possibility.
Oh, more than 8%. You know, we were between 6 and 7% whenever the Cold War was on. If we go to war, you're talking of 15, 20, 25, 30 or more %. If it turns into a global conflict, we then go into total war. You're talking of 100% of the economy is focused on...
as we see in Ukraine and as we see in Russia. Again, it's another. We had a happy Monday talking about this. This is happy Thursday. Thank you for that. We'll talk more about that in the next hour. We're going to be talking about defence a little bit later, and also, again, what the US is looking at right now. Oh, by the way, don't forget, if you miss anything on the show, do remember to go to my YouTube page. It's got a really clever title, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. It's really easy. It does exactly what it says on the tin. You can hit subscribe so you never miss a thing. But if you miss anything on the show, you can find it there on the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show on YouTube. Really easy to spot. Hit subscribe and then you can make sure you're kept up to date. Right now, let's talk about where we are with Israel and Gaza, and indeed British and Western governments' views towards that conflict with Dr. Ashok Kumar. He's an associate professor at Birkbeck University and joins us once again. Good afternoon to you, Ashok.
Good afternoon, Julia.
I mean, we're going to start nice, but I'm sure you and I are going to come to verbal blows, if nothing else, over this issue. We've had an awful lot of criticism of Israel in the last few days, not least by the BBC, by aid agencies, and indeed by our own government of what is going on in Gaza right now. Yesterday, during PMQs, in response to a question, the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer hit out at Israel for recent actions of the Benjamin Netanyahu government, describing actions in relation to the aid and the conditions for people in Gaza as counterproductive, intolerable and appalling. He said that an MP who described what was going on right now as very dark days is absolutely right. He said Israel's recent action is appalling and, in my view, counterproductive and intolerable. We have strongly opposed the expansion of military operations and settler violence and the blocking of humanitarian aid. He said they would keep looking at further action along with our allies, including sanctions, and asserting, of course, that a ceasefire between both sides was the main goal, along with the release of hostages. Do you believe that what the Israeli government and Israeli forces, the IDF, are doing is counterproductive, intolerable and appalling?
Yes, but I think more importantly, it's a question of, is what Keir Starmer's saying meaningful, or is it just hollow words? British government is still supplying parts to the F-35 stealth fighter, which drops 2,000-pound bombs with a 100-meter radius that eviscerates everything within a 100-meter radius, man, woman, child. We still supply that, despite the claims that we didn't. And then basically the Starmer capitulated that we do. And we also run reconnaissance trips that surveils Gaza and provides that information to Israel. So we are directly contributing to the actions of the Israeli government against the people of Gaza.
I mean, I would say hurrah. I'm really, really glad that we are helping our ally, the only democratic state in the Middle East, to provide defence to themselves and protect themselves from a terrorist organisation running Gaza, who are Hamas. I mean, it seems to me that would be something we should be doing. I wouldn't be ashamed or worried about that. A lot of concern currently about, I mean, we know even within Israel, actually, about whether or not sending the IDF forces back into Gaza to basically seize control of Gaza is the right thing to do. We've had 2 hostages' bodies recovered today, very, very tragically. At least some sort of, I suppose, closure for those families, but obviously very great sadness that they had died. But we also have concerns about, innocent men, women and children in particular in Gaza who are struggling with being constantly moved from, refugee camp to refugee camp, to safe zone to non-safe zone, and now with the distribution of aid. But should we be condemning Israel over the handing out of aid when their reasons for taking control of the aid are pretty justified, given the concerns that Hamas has been basically stealing the aid, selling it to people, using it to fund their war effort against Israel?
Well, Julia, there's no evidence to support that claim.
Yes, there is.
There isn't. So the UN came out and said that there's no evidence for that.
Oh, well, in that case.
The World Food Program, which is run by the former Senator McCain's wife, not some, pro-Hamas or whatever you'd like to say. Nobody is saying that that's happened. The only people that's saying that's happened is Israel, because now what we see is they're not distributing aid. They created, and you saw this in the UN, you saw this with the BBC, you saw the UN report on this. 3 consecutive days, they called people hungry, desperate people, and then they mowed them down. So despite their claims that they didn't, the evidence now, David Mencer even admitted to it yesterday on Piers Morgan, saying they came menacingly towards the IDF.
No. Okay, there's a very big difference between what the IDF, the Israeli government, has admitted to, which is that they claim, again, well, we should always use the words claim on all sides. I don't trust everything any government says, but I definitely don't trust anything a terrorist organisation says. And when
What
the BBC,
organization? The BBC, the UN,
Hamas. Where do you think the BBC and Sky and everyone else are getting their information from? Hamas.
Why do you think it's coming from Hamas?
Because it is coming from Hamas. It's coming from their health
on the ground.
Ashok,
they don't allow any journalists. Would you call yourself, Julia? Would you call yourself a journalist? Do you see yourself as a journalist? They have not allowed any journalists in. So then what it allows people to say is any claims that come out of Gaza are
like
Hamas.
you two say. No, let me finish the point. IDF has admitted, they've confirmed that their soldiers say they were approached by people who were on foot, who came to approach the soldiers, who were not supposed to be approaching the soldiers. Their warning shots were fired. They were told to leave. They continued to approach the soldiers. You know what? You're in a war zone. At that point, we know plenty of people have been booby-trapped and approached soldiers. We know that's a perfectly reasonable response from IDF. No one has said that they have been, from the Israeli side, has said they've been shooting women and children. When these claims were made, they were initially claimed by hospitals. We were told many different reasons about, was it gunshots or was it a tank that had fired? All different causes. We got given very specific information, which within minutes, apparently, of this attack taking place. My God, we had CCTV and about 1 million iPhones recording what happened in Liverpool when a car mowed down people in Liverpool at a parade recently. And it took 2 weeks later, we're still getting details on casualties, for goodness sake. But miraculously, in a war zone, oh no, the health ministry, run by Hamas, a terrorist organisation, can give information straight away. You know as well as I do that Hamas has been caught lying about these things repeatedly. There is video footage put out by the aid agency showing that no shooting took place at the time they said it took place.
Julia, this must be exhausting. I've been coming on the show for 4 or 5 years before October 7th. There was a time where you weren't a full propagandist for the state of Israel. When did this happen? This is absurd. Every single claim they make, you defend so vociferously.
No, I've said I don't trust any claim made by a government.
You were a sober-minded. Of course, we had disagreements, but I come on the show and I expect you to you're just an extension. You're like the Japanese soldier fighting that fight after World War II
I don't
ended.
take. I don't take.
And other Israeli officials have already admitted this.
I don't take
You're
everything.
Fighting there, fighting the good fight. You haven't gotten the memo, Julia.
I don't take everything the Israeli government says as gospel, but the BBC and many organisations take everything Hamas says as gospel.
Tell me one thing that you disagree with the Israeli government.
I have no idea what happened and how those people died because we haven't got evidence. But what we do have is video footage of the time at which we were told that there was shooting by Israeli soldiers at this particular place and it not happening.
No, the video footage that was distributed was actually distributed by the Israeli government. Look at Channel 4's report on it.
It was from that place at that time.
It was fraudulent. It was from a different day at a different time.
You're talking about... No, you're talking about two different bits. This is my point. You're talking about two different
massacres.
Bits.
It's very hard to...
No,
it's very confusing.
You're talking about a different video. You're talking about men. The video that was put out showing men who were shooting civilians. That wasn't, that's been verified, that wasn't at the place where it was claimed it was. I looked for verification. Now,
so the Israeli government was being dishonest. Would you say that was true?
That claim was not true, yeah.
So they were being dishonest?
I don't know whether they were deliberately being dishonest, but that claim was untrue. Okay. And I didn't report it as being true.
Good.
So, because I'm not a propagandist, I'm a journalist.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Here's the thing, Ashok. Let's get back. Can we just, rather than talking about me, which I think is a bit boring, let's talk about the plight of the people of Gaza. Is it not the case that people who stand up against Hamas are facing brutal torture and even death? Is it not the case that
where is that coming from? I
you haven't seen the videos of that. You really?
Wait,
Ashok, come on, this is just silly.
Wait, when the ceasefire happened, there were attacks on collaborators. Yes,
collaborators.
But there's no. Yeah, they collaborated with the Israeli state. This is a war. You either say that it's a war. Whenever Israel murders children and women, you say it's a war. Whenever you think Israel treats their collaborators, people who collaborate with Palestinians, with baby gloves, they also have a law that allows them to torture Palestinians. So this is a war. People attack collaborators. I mean, that's
okay.
A war or they're terrorists.
You can go and kneecap and shoot collaborators. Well, that's not what an awful lot of people on the ground who you seem to trust much more than the Israeli government is saying.
It's either a war
the
or they're
families
terrorists.
of those men don't say that's what happened. Okay.
You can't have it both ways.
Do you believe that people are literally starving? We're told, I mean, even the head of the International Committee of the Red Cross has said, what is going on in Gaza is worse than hell. The obsession, I mean, we should all be concerned about innocent people, particularly innocent children caught up in any war. But the obsession with what's going on in Gaza, the Greta Thunberg flotilla, freedom flotilla to take, a small amount of aid to Gaza. They won't be let in. It's just a big, PR propaganda exercise. But there are so many places where there is war currently. There are so many places there have been wars in recent years where we haven't seen people doing a demonstration outside Parliament every day, standing up in Parliament, talking about it, on the TV, aid agencies castigating it and taking sides. We didn't see that. We haven't seen that, in Sudan. We haven't seen that in what's been going on in Yemen. We haven't seen that in what went on in Syria. Why is there this unique obsession with victims in Gaza?
Well, I mean, the first one is the unique position that Britain finds itself in, that Britain is the direct contributor to the war effort that Israel is...
1% of weapons used by Israel.
Britain isn't contributing to what's happening in Sudan. Britain isn't contributing to what's happening.
So we don't care about those babies dying.
It's not that we don't. It's not that we don't care.
We don't care about it. It's not on the. Are we discussing it now?
The main demand of the demonstrators and the protesters is that that Britain stops its complicity in the genocide. And so
it's not a genocide.
That's not.
If it was a genocide,
again, this is you're still that Japanese fighter fighting.
No, I just know what words mean.
It ended a year ago,
what
Julia.
does genocide mean?
Over.
What does the word genocide mean, Asha?
Fine, let's put genocide aside.
You're an associate professor at a university.
Yes.
You must
genocide
know what words that you use
action.
mean.
Genocide is intent and action. Every day, Israeli ministers come out and say, we want to kill or drive out Palestinians. And then the Israeli army goes and IDF goes and kills and drives out Palestinians. They say Palestinians, not even Hamas.
What does the word genocide? They don't say that. What does the word genocide mean?
That's why the ICJ found that there was cause for it being genocide. That's going through the ICJ now. So
no. Okay, again, even the president of the ICJ has corrected those claims in her own words in television interviews. I'm sorry for knowing facts, Ashok. Can you tell me what you,
isn't run by
as
the
a highly educated man,
just the chair
think the
of the
word
ICJ.
genocide means?
If you know what ICJ works, the president, it's not a dictate. She has one vote amongst all the other judges.
No, it wasn't her vote. She's explained very clearly what the ruling was, and it wasn't what you just said. Ashok, what does the word genocide mean? You use this word, you throw it around. What does it mean?
Under international law, it means that a state that either takes an action that, depending on which violation it is, it could be a war crime or it could be crimes against humanity, which is the case here, they have to prove intent.
Intent to do what?
Intent to commit that crime.
No, war crime. No, genocide is one war crime. It's not all war crimes.
Yes, it's
genocide
one war crime.
Is the deliberate killing of a people, of an ethnic group.
Exactly, yes.
And you think that's what they're doing? Why are they? Wait a minute. Why is Israel giving food aid to Palestinians if they want to kill them?
This is such a fraudulent thing. I can't believe you talk about this every day and you believe this. Israel's restricting the international food aid. Israel doesn't give them food aid.
Israel is now giving them food aid.
They have restricted it for 3 months.
They had 5 months of food aid go in. They had 5 months of supplies when the food aid was cut off. And the reason they say it was cut off was because Hamas was using the food aid as a way of controlling the Palestinian people.
No international organization supports what Israel's saying.
No, they don't.
International organization. Tell me a single international organization.
I agree with you.
You and the Israeli state supported that claim. No international organization, whether the UN, the World Food Program, whether it was the Red Cross, Now, no organization supports it.
Ashok, I never said I supported what the Israeli government
You're
is
saying
doing.
You're saying Hamas steals the food. Nobody claims that and supports that.
Loads of people claim that and support that. Even indeed, what's fascinating is
which organization?
Oh, it has
which independent organization?
There's so much evidence coming out.
There's so many organizations.
Plenty of video footage of it being stolen. There are first-hand accounts from people in Gaza.
Tell me one organization.
You know that an awful lot of these aid agencies
Give me one organization,
cannot...
Julia, please.
Why does it have to be an organization?
Tell me one independent.
A lot of organizations that have been involved in Gaza.
You can't name
anyone. The reason why they're a problem is because they have Hamas members. Even UNRWA had 1,200 members of Hamas.
You know, they just got there's various Zionist organizations in the U.S. have started calling 2 weeks ago called Trump Hamas. Now we've got people calling Piers Morgan yesterday. Piers Morgan, people called Piers Morgan Hamas. Julia,
okay, you're just if you're just going to spout random people on the internet,
I'm not asking for any evidence for your claims.
Ashok, I know I've got a colleague of mine in the studio, my guest in the studio, Philip Ingram, who is a military man himself. He's been listening to this conversation, I think, with greater and greater frustration, I think, with both of us. So I'm going to let him have his say. Do you have a listen to what he has to say, please?
There is so much disinformation around that is coming from both sides, Israel as well as Hamas. Hamas have got the opportunity, because they've got a closed environment where there are no international journalists in there, to make sure that the information that leaves Gaza is only information that they want. I have personally looked at videos where I've seen the same child reported killed 3 to 5 times. The same adults done. I have seen videos of Hamas, whenever they're saying that it's been reported that there's mass starvation, standing beside piles and piles of food and firing mortars and weapons at the Israeli forces. The international aid organisations that are inside Gaza get their information from the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is run by Hamas. If they do not put out the information that is provided to them, then either their international workers, but actually their international workers are more concerned about their local workers, are
they're
tortured.
Largely Palestinian staff.
Largely, they're all, most of them are Palestinian staff, are tortured, are bullied, are shot. And murdered. And that has been, all of the intelligence agencies, I'm not just talking about British and American, but French and German and Israeli as well, but other intelligence agencies around the world can see that. The Arab intelligence agencies can see it, which is why none of the Arab countries want to touch anyone coming out of Gaza.
And why Egypt does not open their border.
Correct.
Okay, what do you say to that, Ashok Kumar?
What? That you saw piles of food? You should report to the BBC. Nobody's reporting this. I mean, did you also see the 40 beheaded babies, Philip? I mean, like,
no,
this is...
Again, no one reputable reported
There's
that.
nobody, the same baby 3 times.
No one reported
Where have you seen this? Like, give me a media agency that's run this story. This is a fantasy. You're a fantasist.
It has been
not true.
It has been all over Twitter, and I'm not a fantasist. I analyse information.
It's all over Twitter. Okay, well, you get your news from WhatsApp as well.
Ashok,
tell me a news agency that's reporting this.
Just because, listen, an awful lot of people are getting their news from the BBC. We're not necessarily getting news from
I've seen it on Al Jazeera.
WhatsApp University.
I've seen it on Al Jazeera.
You sound like you've seen it on Al Jazeera. You're lying.
I think he was joking.
Absolutely untrue.
I think the whole point was he was joking, and it is interesting.
You've seen it on Twitter.
Isn't it interesting how your reaction was there? Because of course you wouldn't see anything saying that from Al Jazeera, because of course Al Jazeera is funded by Qatar, who happily harbour the leaders of Hamas.
You wouldn't see the fictitious, fantasies of someone who saw something randomly on Twitter and thinks it's true.
Okay.
On a news agency.
Ashok, can I
you haven't cited any news agency. You haven't cited any organization.
Philip Ingram, I can say, as a former senior military intelligence officer, I'm pretty sure he's not a fantasist. Just one final point I want to. We're told that people in Gaza are starving and that famine approaches. We've had that, I think, for about, the best part of 18 months we've been told that that is the case. How come all these people who have been near starvation are not actually starving to death? That sounds very glib, but it's a reasonable question.
There's reports from the World Food Organization that hundreds of people are near death or have 56 children have already died.
We were
what else
told
do you
that,
need?
well, wasn't it 14,000 children? An aid agency boss said that 14,000 children would die within 72 hours, and I don't believe they did, and it was a completely false claim. But of course, that was one of the aid agencies that you trust.
Which aid agency was that?
I can't remember which one it was. One of the big ones. It was one of the very big ones.
It was either ICRC or UN.
It was it was a UN aid agency. It was.
Well, I mean, I can't speak to that.
You didn't see that either, but it was in the news. It was literally front page news.
Well, I can't speak to that, but they did start letting aid in, and after a lot of pressure, not enough aid, but they started to let aid in, but then it was taken over by the Israelis, and now it's basically a shooting gallery every time they create an aid distribution center.
I think someone is living in fantasy territory. I don't think it's Philip or me. Dr. Ashok Kumar, I really appreciate you joining us, Associate Professor at Birkbeck University. I'm very struggled that a university professor is not sure what the definition of genocide is. If you use words like that, you need to be really, really sure what those words mean. And I'm pretty sure that there's no evidence that is happening in Gaza. But I mean, again, I just think this citing of, well, if someone says it must be true, I always want to see evidence. I don't trust as a journalist, I don't trust anything anyone says. But one thing is I do trust democratic elected governments who are held to account by the whole world's media and indeed by by us every day and their own people in Israel than I do a terrorist organisation. Philip?
But the trouble is, Ashok is in a position of responsibility, as an associate professor in the university, and therefore his opinion is listened by people. And people who do not go out and look at the evidence and look at it dispassionately, listen to the passion, and he comes across very passionately. And I've no doubt that he is believing what it is there, but he is influencing, he is not informing.
Yeah, in fact, he was unaware of that 14,000 statement. That has been discussed in the media for the last week.
Oh, yeah.
I found that extraordinary.
It was headline news.
Yeah, and indeed. Well, I mean, again, absolutely fascinating. But don't worry, Greta Thunberg's on her way on the Freedom Flotilla. So well done. 12:28 is the time. We're going to go to a break. Running a bit late. Want to get some of your calls in on free school meals. At least our kids aren't starving, eh? This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
whole class was being punished for the sins of the one, which we're told not to do that in teacher training college.
Yes, well, as a teacher yourself, exactly.
Yeah, it did seem that
Betty had found out that she wasn't going to get the £300 winter fuel allowance that she relied on to keep her home warm and to heat herself through the cold months. So you went round, as you did every day, and you found her literally frozen to death. Unbelievable.
Yes. Dharma said about the last government, before he got in, that...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. I'm here with fantasist Philip Ingram, as we're now going to call you on the show. That's what Ashok Kumar thinks. Sorry, there was a lot of shouting over each other, but no one was going to give in. I just can't bear it. I'm happy to hear what people have to say, especially when they're spouting stuff that is provably untrue, abject nonsense. But there we are. I'm old-fashioned. Let's go to your calls now about 500,000 more children to get free school lunches. This is lunches we've seen loads, free school breakfast. We've already got like huge number. I mean, kids getting free school lunches a whole way through primary school in London, paid again. They're not free. They're paid for by someone. Oh yeah, us, the taxpayer. But that's decided by Sadiq Khan, the London mayor. Across the country, free school meals up to the age of 7 at lunchtime. Loads of free school breakfasts as well. I don't know why we don't just give kids dinner and everything at school and not. Let's give them beds at school. Just move into the schools. Let's cut parents completely out of it. Love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Liam has done just that. He's in Kent. Liam, good afternoon. Sorry, what do you want to say?
Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a little bit nervy, so I'm very sorry. I was brought up by my father, and just my father. I was an only child.
Yeah.
He was a long-distance lorry driver until about the age of 10, when he had to take me on full-time on his own.
Yeah.
And not once did I ever get a free school meal. Fair play to my dad. I didn't realise till now I'm 30.
How hard that would have been. Do you think he could have... Was it a question of like he could always just about scrape enough money, or that he wasn't entitled to them? Or he didn't claim them?
I think it was more that he didn't want to ask for anything. My dad's very peculiar about handouts.
No,
He
not
always
peculiar,
told me that
proud.
if you haven't got them, yeah, that's it. Sorry. He wouldn't do it. So his argument was he used to pick me up from school on a Friday, and I used to go into Europe with him in the truck.
Yeah.
And I spent most of my weekends learning about hard graft, which to now I'm a driver myself. Unfortunately, I don't have children.
Yeah.
I'd like to, but with this economy and everything, the way things are going,
Yeah, that's one of the concerns.
I can't do it. Me nor my
Well,
partner,
get yourself
could
on
afford it.
benefits, and then you will be able to afford to, and then we'll pay for your kids' school lunches. Deal, sorted.
Yeah, I wouldn't have to get up at 2:30 in the morning either, 6 days a week to go to work.
Ouch!
But
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I would rather go to work and earn my own money. I don't own my house, but I pay all my own bills. Everything I have and my partner has, we own. And it just annoys me that people, especially my age, they can't be bothered and they want everything for nothing. And that really grinds me because I work a lot of hours.
Yeah, I can feel the whole nation nodding along, apart from, what they call now the lanyard class. Liam, all credit to you, mate. All credit to your dad. Again, most families do what they need to do. Parents do what they need to do. And you and your partner are unable to afford to have kids now because you're paying for everyone else's. That's the reality. Liam, I so appreciate your call. Keep up the good work. I've done the 4:30 from years, getting up in the morning. 2:30, wow, that's a different league. Appreciate that, and I think everyone appreciates your hard work, mate. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Oh, hello, Andrew. How are you?
Really good. Well done, you and Philip. Please go and have a large glass of wine after that.
I've got a Sun column to write. There's no drinking after this. Although I think Philip nearly always has a rather nice lunch planned. You've got that Clinton you on.
I've got more work.
Yeah, have you? You've changed. Andrew, what do you want to say about free school meals?
Yeah, I mean, someone texted in, it's that Republican statement, if you can't feed them, don't breed them. But what the Labour government has done cleverly here is they're setting in place the wheels for the next election. Yeah. If you create a class of people that are getting free money, they'll never vote against that. So it ties the hands of both of opposition parties.
Yeah.
So
and it's what Gordon Brown did, put everyone on the payroll with working tax credits.
And actually, the thing that's so sad is it's so negative for the children because it creates a false environment. And the other thing is, not all journalists, but it's always reported as an amount of money, 15 million or whatever. It's not that amount of money. It's wrong to do that. The country, like the lovely chap that you just had on there, what a super individual he is.
Absolutely. We want him to have kids. I want to meet his kids.
But he has to go out and earn the taxable income to create the income tax. So every number they say, double it, because the country has to earn that.
And pay for all the civil servants and all the other stuff as well. Very good point, Andrew. Thank you so much. 12:35 is the time. I'm going to go to a very quick break. Then we're going to be talking about basically, Donald Trump basically banning the citizens of 12 different countries from entering the US at all. They will not be getting any visas. Should we think about doing the same here? We'll talk to Steve Gill about that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk about what is going on with defence and indeed Ukraine and stateside with our next guest, Steve Gill, former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations. Very good afternoon to you, Steve.
Good afternoon, Julia.
I do think, first of all, we do need to start, not with what Trump has been doing in stateside, but this defence spending issue, because we've got Defence Secretary of the US, Peter Hegseth, joining other defence ministers in NATO in Brussels today at this meeting, where we're told that they are close to consensus over 5% of GDP spend on defence for all NATO countries. You know, barely anyone was making the 2% for years. Trump spoke out in his first term, I think quite rightly, speaking out now as well. We're moving up to 2.5%, ambition possible to move to 3%. Now they're talking about 5% in total. Do you think that's going to happen, and do you think it's necessary?
I think it'll be very difficult for some of the countries that have even worse economic basis and foundation than say the Brits. But I do think that the call from Trump is that Europe ought to be paying more of their share of defense. You know, the U.S. is, President Trump says all the time, we have this big, beautiful ocean that separates us from the problems in that area, in Middle East, everywhere else. So I don't think it's unfair to ask for it. I think it's how quickly it has to happen, because, again, you've got economic pressures in Great Britain, and as long as Keir Starmer is the prime minister, you're going to continue to have them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's very interesting. But obviously, the key threat, right now, the immediate threat is Ukraine. It's the threat to Ukraine from Russia. And it's interesting that after we saw those incredibly audacious attacks by Ukraine, not just on bombing jets in Russian territory, you know, thousands of miles away from the Ukrainian border by its very clever drone attack, but also the attack on the Kerch Bridge, providing access to Crimea. We've had a phone call between Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump. Again, these are hour-and-a-half calls they have, even allowing for translations. That's a long call. And Donald Trump reported that Putin has said he will have to respond to Ukraine's drone attack on Russian air bases. We've seen some attacks. We've seen children killed. No one seems to be outcry about that. It happens in Gaza, then it's a genocide. Apparently not when Vladimir Putin does it. But do you think that there has been a game change in terms of this war from that attack, from the conversations that Putin and Donald Trump has had? Do you think we are seeing a different attitude towards Russia and indeed a different attitude towards Ukraine from Donald Trump?
You know, I don't know that talking always leads to a successful negotiation, but I do know that not talking never leads to one. So whether we're talking with Iran, whether we're talking with Gaza and Hamas, when you're talking, there is the possibility of progress. And I think in particular, two issues I'd want to point out. The attacks on those nuclear bombers by Ukraine, you know, they're declaring, oh, this is, you know, Russia's Pearl Harbor. I would point out that after Pearl Harbor, Japan got nuked. So be careful what you proclaim. You need to know your history. Second, that attack, if it was being directed by the US, the UK, the French, the Brits, part of the START treaty is that you have to put your nuclear bombers out where everybody can see them. The same thing with the US nuclear bombers. By attacking with the assistance of the US, that's essentially a break of the nuclear START treaty. And Russia has the full capacity either to respond or to just hide theirs, which is not what we want. So I think Ukraine's actions there were very provocative, not just in terms of Ukraine, Russia, but in terms of the rest of the world.
I mean, I was going to say provocative. These are weapons that are being used against Ukrainian civilians, for goodness sake.
Not nuclear, not the nuclear bombers that were hit.
I know, I think there were other bombers that were hit that have been used. That have been used against Ukraine.
They aren't deploying nuclear weapons, and they're having
not nuclear weapons. They can carry nuclear weapons, but they're also used they've been used for bombing Ukraine and killing civilians.
But the reason they're out there kind of parked in a row, the same way U.S. bombers are, is because under the START treaty, if you can carry those nuclear weapons, you have to put them out where satellites can see them and observe them. I think the other thing with Putin and Trump, and why I think it's so important, is it is clear that Trump's advisors are not telling him the truth of what's happening in Ukraine. When he was on a tarmac a few weeks ago and was surprised that there had been an attempted assassination, that he was surprised that thousands of Ukrainian drones during a ceasefire had precipitated a Russian response. The fact that Putin and Trump are talking, maybe Trump will actually get some accurate information of what's going on. And as you pointed out, the attack on the Crimean Bridge, the attack on the train bridges by what are clearly terrorist type attacks. We need to stop this, and I think if President Putin and President Trump are talking...
this is our democratically elected ally Zelensky ordering counter-attacks on an invading force. We should absolutely be supporting and celebrating this.
Well, I don't think you celebrate a terror attack that kills children and women on a train that blows up a bridge.
It's not a terror attack. This is a bridge being used by an invading nation. I mean, I hate to tell you, wait until you find out all the things that your democratic presidents have done in wars over the years. You're going to be really upset.
Well, and again, I think if you're targeting civilian transportation, that is a war crime.
The bridge is a military asset.
The bridge is a bridge over a train track carrying civilians, and it was clearly a terrorist attack. There were 3 of them, and by the way, they were using C4 explosives that were most likely
terror attack. It was orchestrated by the Ukrainian government.
Yeah, by themselves, using C4 provided by the United States. Again, it is a terror attack, and it is a war crime when you target civilians the same way they're targeting churches.
Steve, honestly, I'm disappointed in you. I'm disappointed in you. We're going to change tack because I want to get to something else, and we want to talk about Donald Trump's announcement signing a new travel ban targeting the citizens of 12 different countries. It follows a terror attack in Colorado by an Egyptian immigrant. but a horrific anti-Semitic attack. Although they said the man was in the country illegally. Interestingly, he's from Egypt. Egypt is not on the list, but he said may well be. This follows a ban on people from largely Muslim countries being banned back in Trump's first term in 2017. But there's 12 countries they are Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Yemen. There's also a partial ban on travellers from 7 other countries: Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan and Venezuela. Basically, a lot of these are the basket cake countries around the world. He called them something whole countries at one point, Donald Trump, didn't he? Some of these in Africa. I have to say, I think there are a lot of people who look down that list of countries and say, yeah, maybe we should have a ban on people from those countries unless we can verify exactly who they are and vet them security-wise, because his White House is saying we simply can't vet these people safely. They are a risk to us and they can't get into the country. Do you support that ban?
Well, fear not, Julia. I will put in a good word to make sure you will never be put on the ban list, and you can come see us at any time.
Thank you.
I do think the common element are that many of these are supporters or encouragers of radical Islam, and that's where this Egyptian man, he was a radical Islamist. He was here illegally, and it's not the country of origin, it's the ideology that is driving many of these people. Now, I do think that it's very difficult when you start trying to vet people, particularly you've got the visa issues for education that are also being included in this.
And this is the attack on Harvard for basically just being horrific.
So if you've got some 18 or 19-year-old, I'm not sure about the social media in some of these third world countries, but are you going to have the ability to vet what some 18-year-old coming from Eritrea thinks? So how are you going to vet these people other than they're coming from an Islamist country? I think there are issues and there are concerns in terms of how you're going to do that. But you need to be vetting and knowing who's coming in, what are they coming in to do, and are they following the rules once they get here? And I would encourage my friends and cousins in Great Britain, y'all should be considering this, as you're having about 1,000 a day enter across the channel, and you don't know who they are, you don't know what they're going to do, and you're getting overrun.
Those are the ones who are arriving illegally. We're having quite a lot coming legally as well. Steve Gill from advisor to Clinton and Bush administrations, thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram, you would see his face during a lot of that conversation on Ukraine. I think you're going to agree with me on this, Philip. I know you want to come back on that.
Yeah, I just want to fact check some stuff that Steve came up with. The Russians withdrew from the START treaty in February 23, so there's no requirement under them withdrawing from it to park their nuclear bombers out.
They're not big on international rules,
the Ukrainians did not target their nuclear forces. The Tu-95 and the Tu-22, which were targeted, can and do fire KH-101 and KH-47M2 cruise missiles.
I'm lost as well.
Cruise missiles and hypersonic missiles at Ukraine. The squadrons that are carrying the nuclear weapons did not get targeted. Now, these aircraft it's exactly the same aircraft, and the missiles can carry nuclear warheads as well, but they were separate squadrons.
Also, crucially, the attack on the Kerch Bridge. He's saying this is a terrorist attack. This was an attack that Ukraine has owned up to.
There's 2 bridges. There was a railway crossing where there was a train hit, and there were civilians killed in that whenever they came off the bridge. Those bridges and the junction that it was is used primarily to transport logistics and support to Russian forces on the front line in Ukraine. It's a legitimate military target.
Absolutely. 12:49 is the time. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk more on defence with the writer and commentator Elliot Wilson. And where are we when it comes to NATO and 5% of GDP going on defence spending? Have we even got that money? That £22 billion black hole that Rachel Reeves started with, she claims, back last July, is getting bigger by the second. This is Talk, Home of Common Sense.
Is that a real baby bump, or has she strapped it on? She's got form for strapping on baby bumps. So what do you think as you see it? I think
there's something very wrong with that shape, in my view. I don't know. Look, I'm mesmerised, but I'm kind of. Do you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking, I'm glad the Queen is no longer with us, because oh my Lord, how she would be shuddering at those images. It's so undignified.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, and 12:52 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me. Good to have a defence expert in the studio. Also got defence historian and writer with The Spectator, actually Elliot Wilson, who joins us right now to talk about where we are on issues of defence. Good afternoon to you, Elliot.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Appreciate you joining us. Now, we talked a little bit around the houses with Steve Gill on this, but specifically on this NATO summit today, where we've got all the defence ministers and secretaries of state from NATO members, and they appear, we understand, according to sources, to be getting close to a consensus on a 5% minimum spend of GDP on defence. Now, we've just had this big row here in the UK about going from 2.3% to 2.5%. And now even, it talks about, is the government reneging on the ambition, or whatever word the government is using this week, on moving to 3% sometime in the next decade. A lot of people who understand this stuff saying that's way too late and way too little. But what do you make of a possible agreement at 5%, given, and you've worked in Commons a long time, given where public finances right now are?
Well, I think from Keir Starmer's point of view, things have moved extremely quickly. When he announced in February that we were going to increase from 2.3% of GDP to 2.5% by basically emptying the overseas aid budget, that was quite a step forward. And then he was talking about an ambition to go to 3% sometime in the next Parliament. That seemed as if it was a step forward, but suddenly there's been a sea change in NATO membership, and the NATO member states are now saying, no, we need to go far further than that. We need to be realistic and face the threats we are being faced by.
What's changed, though? Well, I mean, they've definitely changed the perspective, although we understand behind the scenes a lot of this has been called for. We know what Donald Trump has been saying since his first term in office, that, taxpayers in America shouldn't be funding the defence of Europe. European people should be doing so. But what has suddenly happened in the last few weeks, month or so, that has changed the perspective on how seriously European members of NATO need to take this?
I think mainly it's finally dawned on European members of NATO that Donald Trump is serious about this, that he's not just blowing hot air, that it's not just some idle threat, that he genuinely probably won't withdraw from NATO, because that'd be quite difficult constitutionally. Yeah. He could effectively just say, no, you're on your own, we're not devoting any significant resources to it. And I think European member states have suddenly realised that this could happen, and that the war in Ukraine is still going on, that Putin is still a clear and present danger to European security, and so that we do need to do something serious. And there has emerged this consensus that Mark Rutte was talking about last week of 5% of GDP, which, to be fair, is going to be split probably between 3.5% on sort of core defence capabilities, and then 1.5% on infrastructure around that. But still,
sort of cyber, border security, and things like that included in that.
Far in advance of anything that the UK is prepared to talk about at the moment.
And we're talking about huge sums of money as well. But I mean, I don't want to come to the actual number sums, because when people talk about whatever percentage of GDP, 2.3, 2.5, 3, 5, whatever it is, what does that actually mean in real money? But it is interesting. I think Americans would be crazy to try and go isolationist, but this isn't really about being an isolationist United States. This is about dealing with stuff also on their own back door in the other direction. Yeah, we focus everything on the Atlantic, but actually what's going on in the South China Seas, in the Pacific, is of even more concern to the Americans, and actually a massive concern to the world economy in terms of the threat that China poses to Taiwan. And we've had leading figures. I mean, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State for Defence, saying there's going to be an attack imminently. They're building up their forces. They're spending a huge proportion of their GDP on military. Why would would they be doing that if they weren't planning something which they've said they will do, seizing Taiwan by whatever means necessary? It's perfectly reasonable for America to say, look, we can't be dealing with Europe and paying for everything going on in Europe and Russia and Ukraine at the same time as dealing with China, which is a much more significant military threat to the world.
I think, the Americans have made a reprioritization of their resources, and that's reasonable. I think they underestimate how important internationally European security is, but they're quite right to focus on China and South China Sea. Xi Jinping has been saying for some time that the reunification, as he calls it, of China and Taiwan is a critical part of his mission as president. He's going to do something. Something will happen probably within the next couple of years, if not a full-scale invasion, although I think that's looking more likely than it was. Some kind of blockade, some kind of major cyber attack. Yeah. And that's going to ask very major questions of America's policy. Yeah. America is bound by treaty to supply Taiwan with defensive capabilities. It's not bound to go to its military assistance necessarily, though it can do so. And Trump's been very,
He's been very cagey about that, hasn't he? And again, I think, again, the best way, as we know, best way of deflecting and deterring these sorts of attacks is to make it clear that you would come to the aid. What sort of numbers are we talking about when we're talking about 5% of GDP, though, in terms of the actual spend? How big an increase would it be on where we are now?
Well, I mean, the MOD's budget at the moment is something like 55-60 billion a year. So we'd be talking about going well towards 100 billion.
So at least another 40 billion a year being spent.
That's the money we're talking.
And we're going to. I mean, I'm going to look down the back of the sofa when I get home later, and I'm wondering where they're going to find that.
Well, I think play the lottery is the key thing here, Julie. Every little helps. But no, I mean, it's going to be a very painful matter of priorities, because even if the government's economic strategy, such as it is, eventually produces some growth, there's going to be money found from somewhere.
Yeah, it's not producing 40 billion, is it? Thank you very much, Elliot Wilson. Really good to have your analysis. Thank you very much, writer and historian Elliot Wilson. Philip Ingram, very brief response to that, please.
Well, very, very briefly, current defence budget 65.6 billion. 3% is up to 85.6 billion, which is what the government has got an ambition to. 3.5% is up to 100 billion, and 5% is 142 billion.
And we're that £22 billion black hole's looking like a joy right now. That's the sunny day.
It shows the government has done no planning whatsoever.
Well, neither did the last lot. And neither did the ones before.
The last lot didn't.
Everyone's had their head in the sand.
Exactly, but this lot are putting out plans where they haven't looked at what's happening in the future.
Absolutely. God, it's another happy show. Ian Collins is here.
Chomping at the bit here. Just don't spend any. We're fine. No one's going to bomb us. No one's going to attack us. Don't spend any of it. We'll be 145 billion. These were the words, not my words, not a former defence secretary, not somebody from NATO, but Kenny in Bicester yesterday, who sent us a text saying, we don't need to worry about this stuff, we're just fine. And I thought, well,
he may have a point.
You could, well, he might have a point. You could